Victoria Hampton sat in her office on the second floor of Élysée, staring at the laptop screen with the kind of numbness that comes after panic has exhausted itself. The spreadsheet was open. The number in the red column had crossed $847,000. 7 days. That's all it had taken. 7 days for her 15-year empire to collapse like a sandcastle at high tide. Her phone buzzed for the 100th time that morning. Another journalist. She didn't even look at the name anymore. TMZ, Variety, the Los Angeles Times, some podcast called Accountability Hour. They all wanted the same thing. A statement. An explanation. Blood in the water. She reached for the crystal tumbler on her desk. The Macallan inside barely touched since she'd poured it at 9 a.m. Her hand trembled. Not from the alcohol. She hadn't had enough for that. But from the memory that kept looping in her mind like a security tape she couldn't shut off. That morning, 7 days ago, Tuesday, the weather had been perfect, 72 degrees, the kind of Los Angeles morning that made tourists weep with joy and locals forget why they complained about rent. She'd been reviewing supplier invoices, annoyed that the organic lavender from Provence had gone up 3%. 3%. She'd actually been angry about that. And then Derek had come upstairs, that smug smile on his face, the one he wore when he thought he'd handled something efficiently. Took care of that situation out front, he'd said, adjusting his Tom Ford cuffs. She'd barely looked up. What situation? He'd waved dismissively. Another vagrant. You know how they drift over from Santa Monica? I explained our clientele expectations. He moved along. She'd nodded. Gone back to her lavender invoice. That was it. That was the moment. The hinge upon which everything turned. She hadn't asked questions. Hadn't looked out the window. Hadn't thought about it again until 72 hours later when her phone started ringing at 6 a.m. and didn't stop. Victoria closed the laptop. She couldn't look at the numbers anymore. The reality was worse than spreadsheets anyway. The dining room downstairs, the one that used to require reservations 3 weeks in advance, had served 18 customers yesterday. 18. On a Monday, sure, but even Mondays used to pull 70, 80 covers. The phones weren't ringing for reservations. Just journalists and lawyers. Her lawyer, Mitchell Crane, had been very clear. You're not legally liable for anything. Your staff didn't touch him. Free speech, private property, you're covered. Then he'd paused, and she'd heard the intake of breath that meant bad news was coming. But legally protected and socially surviving are two different things, Victoria. This isn't going away. Not when Keanu Reeves is the one telling the story. Keanu Reeves. She'd known he was in the cafe that morning. Of course she had. Her hostess had texted her, 3 exclamation points, Keanu downstairs. Victoria had meant to go down, say hello, maybe comp his coffee, get a photo for Instagram. But she'd been busy. The lavender thing. A conference call with her accountant. Life. She hadn't known he'd seen everything. Hadn't known he'd been sitting in the corner booth, the one by the window, watching Derek escort that man away from the entrance. Hadn't known that Keanu, the man famous for being decent, for eating lunch alone on park benches and chatting with construction workers, had watched her staff mock someone for being poor. And she definitely hadn't known that he'd do something about it. Victoria stood, her Louboutins sinking slightly into the plush carpet that had cost $900 per square yard. She walked to the window that overlooked Rodeo Drive. Down below, a small group of protesters had gathered. They'd been there since Thursday. Maybe a dozen people, rotating shifts, holding signs. Élysée, where compassion costs extra. Homelessness isn't a crime. One sign just had a photo of Keanu with a halo drawn over his head in gold Sharpie. Her head of security had wanted to call the police. She'd said no. What was the point? They weren't breaking any laws. And calling the cops on protesters angry about how you treated a homeless man seemed like exactly the kind of move that would add another week to this nightmare. She thought about that man now. Thomas something. The articles had named him. Thomas Wells. 54 years old. Marine Corps veteran. Served in Iraq. She'd learned more about him from Twitter than she'd ever bothered to learn when he'd stood outside her establishment. That was the thing that made her stomach clench. It wasn't that she'd been cruel. She hadn't done anything. She just not cared. And somehow, in the core of public opinion, that was worse. Derek had been the one who'd actually gone outside, who'd made the threats about calling his golf buddy at the LAPD. But Victoria had created the culture where Derek thought that was acceptable, where her staff had laughed about those people and ruining the view. She'd built Elysee to be exclusive. That was the whole point. White marble imported from Carrara. Gold fixtures from a boutique manufacturer in Belgium. Menu prices that made people feel special for being able to afford them. She'd wanted her customers to feel like they were part of something elite, something rare. And they had. God, they had. Until everyone realized what elite actually meant. Victoria's phone buzzed again. She looked this time. An email from her commercial real estate agent. Subject line, serious inquiry. Her heart jumped, then sank just as fast. She knew what this was. Some investor smelling blood, ready to buy her out at a fraction of what the place was worth. She'd paid $2.4 million for the space back in 2009, put another $1 million into renovations. The email probably had an offer around $800,000, maybe less. She opened it anyway. $700,000. There it was. The investor was very interested in the location and existing infrastructure, with plans for a rebrand focused on community integration and social responsibility. Community integration. That was rich. Code for, we're going to erase everything you built and make sure everyone knows this isn't your place anymore. Victoria closed her eyes. She could see it all so clearly now, the chain of choices that had led here. Hiring Derek because he'd managed a Michelin star place in San Francisco and understood the aesthetic. Pei training her staff to prioritize ambience over what? Humanity? That sounded so dramatic. But what else did you call it when you taught people that someone's worth was measured by their ability to afford a $30 cappuccino? She remembered the moment she'd first watched the video. Someone had filmed it, of course. Someone always filmed everything now. A woman in yoga pants, probably on her way to a SoulCycle class, had captured the whole thing on her iPhone. 47 seconds that had been viewed 8.3 million times. Derek, in his perfect suit, his hair catching the morning sun like he was in a goddamn commercial. Thomas, shoulders hunched, holding that cardboard sign. Veteran. Anything helps. God bless. The audio was clear. Too clear. Derek's voice, not yelling, but worse than yelling, that cold corporate tone that made disdain sound reasonable. Sir, this is private property. You're discouraging paying customers. If you don't leave, I'll need to involve the authorities. Thomas's voice, quieter, harder to hear. I'm on the public sidewalk, sir. I have a right. Technically, yes. But I play golf with Captain Morrison of the Beverly Hills PD. I'm confident we can find a reason for a citation. Loitering, public nuisance, take your pick. That line. That fucking line. It had been clipped into 1,000 TikToks, remixed into songs, turned into a meme. I play golf with Captain Morrison had become shorthand for privilege weaponized. There were Twitter accounts dedicated just to that phrase now. And through it all, in the video, if you looked carefully at the window reflection, you could see him. Keanu, sitting alone, watching, his face unreadable, but his hand had been gripping the edge of the table. Knuckles white. Victoria hadn't seen that detail until a YouTuber had done a breakdown, freezing frames, zooming in. Watch his reaction. The YouTuber had said, her voice thick with emotion. He's furious. But he doesn't storm out. He doesn't make a scene. He just watches. And then he plans. That was 7 days ago. The morning when she'd cared more about lavender costs than about the man outside her door. The morning when everything had been fine, profitable, successful. The morning before Keanu Reeves decided that silence wasn't an option anymore. Victoria opened her laptop again. She pulled up Twitter, something she'd been doing compulsively, like pressing on a bruise to see if it still hurt. The hashtag was still trending. Number 6 in the United States. Hashtag LSE shame. She scrolled through the latest posts. Someone had created a side-by-side image. Elise's old Instagram, full of champagne flutes and beautifully plated foie gras, next to a photo of Thomas sitting in a doorway, wrapped in a blanket. The caption, which one deserves dignity? 40,000 retweets. 92,000 likes. Victoria closed the laptop again. She picked up her phone, stared at Mitchell's contact. She should call him back, discuss the offer, start the process of letting go. But her thumb hovered over a different name. Derek. She'd fired him on Thursday, a full day after the story broke. Too late, everyone said. She should have done it immediately. But she'd hesitated, thinking maybe this would blow over. Maybe it was just Twitter rage that would evaporate by the weekend. How could she have been so stupid? This wasn't just Twitter. This was Keanu Reeves, the man who'd taken a pay cut so the Matrix crew could get better catering, who'd given away millions from his back-end deals to the special effects team, who'd been photographed 100 times just sitting with homeless people, talking to them like they were friends. Of course, he wasn't going to let this go. This was exactly the kind of thing he'd spent 30 years proving he cared about. She set the phone down, looked around her office. The framed reviews from Bon Appetit and Food and Wine. The photo of her shaking hands with Gavin Newsom at some charity thing. Her James Beard nomination certificate. She hadn't won, but being nominated had been enough to put Élysée on the map. All of it meant nothing now, because she'd forgotten the only thing that actually mattered. She'd forgotten that the people who passed by her windows were human before they were anything else. Before they were customers or nuisances or aesthetic problems, they were human. And Keanu Reeves had reminded everyone, in the most devastating way possible, not by yelling or shaming or making a scene, but by doing what she should have done, by seeing Thomas, by helping him, and then, only then, by making sure the world knew that someone hadn't. Victoria's hands were shaking again. She picked up the tumbler, drained the Macallan. It burned going down. She deserved that burn. She deserved a lot more than that. Outside her window, the protesters started chant. She couldn't make out the words, but she could hear the rhythm. Steady, persistent, not going anywhere. Just like this story. Just like the consequences of that one morning, 7 days ago, when she'd been too busy to care. The laptop set closed on her desk. Inside it, that number waited, $847,000. And counting. 7 days earlier, the morning had started the way all Tuesday mornings started at Élysée. With precision, with ritual, with the kind of careful choreography that made luxury look effortless. The marble gleamed under recessed lighting that had cost $12,000 to install, positioned at exactly the right angles to make the Carrara stone look like it was glowing from within. The tables, each one a custom piece from a furniture maker in Milan, were arranged with mathematical precision. 18 inches between each setting. Never 17. Never 19. 18. The espresso machine, a La Marzocco leva that had set Victoria back $35,000, hissed and gurgled behind the bar. It was chrome and brass and beautiful, more sculpture than appliance. Customers took photos of it constantly, posted them on Instagram with captions about coffee as art and the perfect pour. Ashley Martinez stood behind the host's stand, checking her reflection in the polished surface of the marble counter. 26 years old, blonde highlights that cost $300 every 6 weeks, wearing the uniform Victoria insisted on, black theory shift dress, nude Louboutin heels, minimal jewelry. A single gold necklace, delicate, expensive, but not showy. The aesthetic was important. Everything at Élysée had an aesthetic. She glanced at her Apple Watch. 8:47. The morning rush would start in 13 minutes. That's when the first wave arrived. Agents and managers and producers. People who had 9 a.m. meetings and wanted to caffeinate first. Wanted to be seen caffeinating first. Being at Élysée before 9 meant you were important enough to be awake and working while others were still in bed. The door opened. Ashley looked up, her professional smile already in place, and then faltered slightly. The man walking in didn't fit. That was her first thought, and she hated herself a little for thinking it, but there it was. He didn't fit. He was wearing a leather jacket, brown and worn, the kind of worn that came from years of use, not from some designer's distressing process. His jeans were dark, but faded at the knees. Motorcycle boots, scuffed. His hair was longer than the usual clientele wore it, dark with threads of gray, pulled back loosely. A beard, not quite trimmed, but not quite wild either. He looked like he'd just gotten off a bike. Or maybe out of bed. Ashley's smile tightened into something more professional, more careful. Good morning. Do you have a reservation? The man smiled, and something about it was disarming. Tired but genuine. Noto Sebastian. Just coffee. And I'm waiting for someone. Meeting at 9. His voice was quiet. Ashley had to lean forward slightly to hear him. In a room full of people who projected, who made sure their voices carried so everyone knew they were closing deals and making things happen, his quietness was almost aggressive in its difference. Of course. Right this way. She grabbed a single menu, leather-bound, hand-stitched, because even the menus at Élysée were an experience. She led him through the dining room, past tables where women in Chanel jackets sipped green smoothies and men in Brioni suits typed urgently on MacBooks. She seated him at table 14, corner booth, near the window, but not at the window. The window tables were for regulars, for people they knew would be photographed, for influencers with the right follower counts. This man, whoever he was, got the corner. Visible enough to not feel insulted, but not prominent enough to matter. Your server will be right with you. Ashley set the menu down, smiled again, and walked back to her station. As she passed the bar, she caught Brad's eye. Brad Chun, the head barista, 29 years old, tattoos hidden under long sleeves, a degree in philosophy from UCLA that he never used except to make pretentious jokes about deconstructing coffee culture while literally constructing coffee. Ashley tilted her head slightly toward table 14. Brad glanced over, then back at her, raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. They perfected this silent language over the 2 years they'd worked together. The communication of judgment, quick and quiet. Brad pulled a shot of espresso, tamped it with the kind of precision that would make a surgeon jealous, and leaned toward Ashley as she approached. Tourist? I don't know. He said he has a meeting. Dressed like that. Brad wiped down the steam wand, his movements efficient, practiced. Must be one of those tech guys. You know, the ones who make millions and dress like they're homeless to prove they're not shallow. Ashley laughed, quiet enough that it wouldn't carry. God, I hate that. Like, we get it. You're so rich you don't care about appearances. Meanwhile, they're wearing $1,000 sneakers. Brad glanced at table 14 again. Those aren't $1,000 sneakers. Well, maybe he's one of those actually poor tech guys. The ones who are still trying. They both smiled. It was mean, and they both knew it, but it was also the kind of meanness that felt harmless. Punching sideways, not down. Or at least that's what they told themselves. Everyone at Élysée engaged in it. The quiet assessment of who belonged and who didn't, who was worth remembering and who was just passing through. The man at table 14 didn't seem to notice. He'd pulled out a phone, old model iPhone, the kind with a visible scratch across the screen protector. He wasn't scrolling, just holding it, looking out the window at Rodeo Drive, at the people passing by in their morning routines. Jessica Park, the floor manager, appeared from the kitchen. 32, Korean-American, dressed in the same black uniform as Ashley, but with an air of authority that came from 6 years at Élysée. She surveyed the room with the practiced eye of someone who could spot a problem before it became a problem. Empty water glass at table 7. Napkin on the floor near the bathroom. And the man at table 14, sitting alone, looking like he'd wandered in from a different zip code. She walked over to Brad. Who's that? Don't know. Meeting someone at 9. Jessica checked her tablet, swiped through the reservation list. Nothing listed for 9 at 14. He said he's waiting for someone. Maybe they booked it. Jessica frowned. Keep an eye on it. If they don't show by 9:15, check if he's actually ordering anything or just squatting for the Wi-Fi. Brad nodded. Jessica moved on, stopping at table 4 to smile at a regular, a producer whose name she'd memorized, whose usual order she could recite. Mrs. Dalton, so wonderful to see you. The usual this morning? This was how Élysée worked. The regulars got names, got warmth, got the illusion that this wasn't just a transaction, but a relationship. Everyone else got professionalism, politeness, but not warmth. Warmth had to be earned, and you earned it with consistency, with the right last name, or with the right credit card. The man at table 14 ordered coffee when Brad approached. Just black coffee. Thank you. Any particular roast? We have a single origin from Ethiopia, very bright, citrus notes. Or a blend from Colombia, more balanced. Whatever you recommend. I'm sure it's good. Brad paused. People didn't do that here. They didn't defer. They had opinions about their coffee, strong opinions, opinions they developed from spending too much time on coffee blogs and not enough time realizing it was all just variations of the same drug. I'll bring you the Ethiopian. I think you'll like it. I'm sure I will. Thanks. Brad walked away, slightly off balance. There was something about the guy that he couldn't pin down. Not rude, but not trying to impress either. Just there, existing in a space that usually demanded performance. He made the pour over himself, even though technically they had a junior barista for that. But the morning was slow, and his hands needed something to do. As the water spiraled over the grounds, releasing that smell that never got old no matter how many thousand cups he'd made, he glanced at table 14 again. The man was still looking out the window, and that's when Brad saw what he was looking at. Not the Ferraris parked along the street. Not the women in Hermes scarves walking small dogs that cost more than used cars. He was looking at the opposite side of the street, at the small alcove between two buildings where someone had set up a sleeping bag and a cardboard sign. Brad couldn't read the sign from here, but he didn't need to. He knew what it said. Something about being homeless, about needing help, about God blessing you for whatever you could spare. They all said some version of that. He'd walked past 100 of them in Los Angeles. Everyone had. You learned to stop seeing them after a while. It was a survival mechanism in a city where the gap between rich and poor was so wide you could drop a house in it. The coffee finished dripping. Brad poured it into one of the ceramic mugs, handmade by a potter in Ojai, $42 each wholesale. He brought it to table 14, set it down with the careful reverence they used for all beverages. Here you go. Let me know what you think. The man looked up, smiled. I'm sure it's perfect. Thank you. Brad walked away. The man took a sip, and Brad, watching from the bar, saw him nod slightly. Appreciation, not performance. Just a quiet acknowledgement that, yes, it was good coffee. At 8:53, the morning rush began. The door opened and didn't stop opening. A wave of press suits and designer bags and voices that carried. The room filled with the sound of importance, of deals being made and careers being managed, and Hollywood doing what Hollywood did, which was convince itself that it mattered more than it did. Ashley seated a party of 4 at table 6. Agents, all of them, you could tell by the way they handed out business cards before they'd even ordered. Jessica brought water to table 9, where a director whose last film had made $200 million worldwide was having a breakfast meeting with a writer whose script he'd probably option and never produce. And at table 14, the man in the leather jacket sat quietly, drinking his coffee, watching the window, watching the street, watching something the rest of them had stopped seeing a long time ago. At 8:58, Derek Stanford arrived. He came through the back entrance, the one that led up from the parking garage, because Derek didn't walk in from the street like a civilian. Derek made an entrance, even when no one was watching. 32 years old, 6 feet tall, a body maintained by a trainer who charged $200 an hour. His suit was Tom Ford, charcoal gray, fitted so precisely that it looked painted on. His shirt was white, Egyptian cotton, custom-made by a tailor in downtown L.A. who only worked by appointment. His tie was Hermes, navy with a subtle pattern that cost more than some people's rent. And on his wrist, catching the light as he adjusted his cuffs, a Rolex Submariner. Not the new one. The vintage one from the 80s that his father had given him that had appreciated to $40,000. Derek was Victoria's nephew, her sister's son, but he'd earned his position, or at least that's what he told himself and anyone who asked. He'd managed a restaurant in San Francisco, a place with a Michelin star and a 6-month waiting list. He understood fine dining. He understood luxury. He understood that the customer experience wasn't just about food. It was about feeling, about creating an environment where people felt special, felt elevated, felt like they were part of something exclusive. He did his morning walkthrough, checked that the tables were set correctly, that the silverware was aligned, that the flowers and the centerpieces were fresh. He stopped at the bar, tasted the Ethiopian blend Brad had made, nodded approval. He looked at the reservation list on Jessica's tablet, noted that they had a full lunch service booked, that the evening was looking strong. Everything was perfect. Everything was as it should be. And then he glanced out the window and saw the problem. The homeless man was back. Same guy as yesterday. Same cardboard sign. Same sleeping bag rolled up next to him. He was sitting now, his back against the building, positioned where everyone walking toward Élysée would have to pass him, would have to see him, would have to make the choice to ignore him or acknowledge him, and either way, would have their mood affected. Derek felt his jaw tighten. He'd talked to this guy yesterday, had explained, politely but firmly, that this wasn't the right spot for him, that there were shelters, services, places designed to help, that sitting here, in front of luxury retail and high-end dining, wasn't helping anyone, least of all himself. The guy had nodded, had agreed, had moved along, and now he was back, which meant the polite approach hadn't worked, which meant Derek needed to be clearer. He walked back to the bar. "Brad, I'm stepping outside for a minute. If anyone needs me, I'll be right back." Brad nodded, already pulling another shot. Derek headed for the front door. Ashley saw him going and knew, somehow, what he was about to do. She'd seen this before. Derek had a thing about maintaining standards, about protecting the brand. He wasn't cruel, she thought. He was just practical. Derek pushed through the glass door, the one with the gold handle and the Élysée logo etched into it. The morning air hit him, 72 degrees, perfect. He turned right, walked 4 steps, and stopped in front of the man with the cardboard sign. The man looked up. 50-something, hard to tell exactly. Weathered face, the kind of weathered that came from sleeping outside, from sun and wind and not enough food. But his eyes were clear. Blue, pale blue. And tired. So tired. Derek put on his professional smile. The one he used for difficult customers. The one that was polite but firm, that made it clear he was in charge, and this conversation would go the way he decided it would go. "Good morning. We spoke yesterday, I believe." The man nodded. "Yes, sir. I remember. I thought I made it clear that this isn't an appropriate location for you to set up. I'm on a public sidewalk, sir. I'm not breaking any laws." Derek's smile didn't falter. "Technically, you're correct. But let me explain something to you. The businesses along this street, we pay a significant amount in property taxes. We contribute to the community. And part of what we're paying for is an environment that's conducive to commerce. You sitting here, it affects that environment. It discourages customers. It creates a..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "An atmosphere that's inconsistent with the experience we're providing." The man looked down at his sign. "I'm just trying to eat, sir. I'm not hurting anyone. I understand that. And I'm sympathetic, I really am. But there are proper channels for this. Shelters, food banks, social services. Have you tried contacting any of those?" "Yes, sir. They're full. Or there's waiting lists. Or they have rules I can't." He trailed off. "I'm trying. I'm really trying." Derek felt a flicker of something. Pity, maybe. Or guilt. But he pushed it down. This wasn't about feelings. This was about business. About protecting Victoria's investment. About maintaining the standards that made Élysée worth the prices they charged. "I'm going to be direct with you." Derek crouched down, bringing himself to the man's eye level. A technique he'd learned in management training. Make it personal, but maintain authority. "If you don't move along voluntarily, I'm going to call the Beverly Hills Police Department. I play golf with Captain Morrison. We're members of the same club. And I'm confident that if I call him, he'll send someone out here. They'll find a reason to cite you. Loitering, public nuisance. There are a dozen ordinances they can use. Is that what you want? A citation? A record that makes it even harder for you to get back on your feet?" The man stared at him. Those pale blue eyes, not angry, just defeated. Like he'd heard this speech before. Like he'd heard 1,000 variations of it from 1,000 different men in expensive suits who all had the same message. "You don't belong here." "No, sir. That's not what I want." "Then I'm asking you, respectfully, to move along. Go to Santa Monica. Go downtown. Go somewhere where there are services that can help you. But don't sit here. Don't make this difficult." Inside Élysée, at table 14, the man in the leather jacket watched through the window. He'd been watching since Derek walked outside. He'd been watching the whole interaction. His coffee sat cooling in front of him, forgotten. His hand gripped the edge of the table. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough that his knuckles had gone white. His face showed nothing. Years of acting, of controlling his expressions for cameras, had taught him how to keep his emotions locked down. But inside, something was burning. A slow, steady burn that started in his chest and radiated outward. He knew what he was watching. He'd seen it before. The polite cruelty, the weaponized civility, the way power dressed itself up in reasonable words and sympathetic tones while still delivering the same message. You are less than us. Outside, the man with the cardboard sign stood up slowly. His knees seemed to hurt. He bent down, rolled up his sleeping bag with practiced efficiency, tucked the cardboard under his arm. He looked at Derek one more time, and there was something in that look that made Derek uncomfortable. Not anger, not even resentment, just a kind of sad understanding. Yes, sir. I'll move along. I appreciate your cooperation. And truly, I do hope you find the help you need. The man walked away, heading west on Rodeo Drive, carrying everything he owned. Derek watched him go, then brushed off his hands, an unconscious gesture, as if he'd touched something dirty. He turned and walked back into Elysee, nodding at Ashley as he passed. Situation handled. Ashley smiled. Thank you. That guy's been there 2 days. It's nice to have it resolved. Derek walked back to the bar. Brad had finished the morning prep, had lined up 6 perfect cappuccinos for a group at table 8. Derek picked up a cup, took a sip, set it down. Perfect as always. Thanks, boss. Derek looked around the dining room. Everything in its place. Everyone where they belonged. Order restored. He pulled out his phone, checked his messages, responded to a text from Victoria about the evening specials. At table 14, the man in the leather jacket reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone. Older iPhone, scratch screen protector. His thumb hovered over the contacts. He scrolled through. Stopped a name, Maria. His assistant. The woman who'd been with him for 12 years. Who knew him better than almost anyone. Who could hear in his voice when something was wrong. He typed out a message. His thumbs moved slowly, deliberately. Not because he was uncertain, but because he was being careful. Choosing his words with the same precision he used when choosing how to deliver a line. Maria, cancel my 9 a.m. I'm going to be busy. I need 2 things. First, contact information for Hope Foundation in LA director level. Second, find me the name of the best personal stylist at the nearest Nordstrom. I need someone available today. It's urgent. He hit send, slipped the phone back into his pocket, took a last sip of his coffee. The Ethiopian blend. Bright, citrus notes just like Brad had said. It was good coffee. Excellent coffee. But suddenly he couldn't taste it anymore. All he could taste was anger. He stood up, pulled out his wallet, the leather-worn but quality, and placed a $50 bill on the table. For an $8 coffee. He didn't wait for change. Ashley saw him leaving, called out, "Sir, your change." He turned, smiled that same tired smile. "Keep it." The coffee was perfect. And then he was gone, pushing through the gold-handled door, out onto Rodeo Drive. He turned left, west, the same direction the homeless man had gone. Inside Elysee, business continued. The espresso machine hissed. Conversations flowed. Deals were made. And no one, not Ashley or Brad or Jessica or Derek, knew that anything significant had just happened. They didn't know that the quiet man in the leather jacket had just made a decision. That he'd seen something he couldn't unsee, heard something he couldn't unhear. That in his mind, a plan was already forming. Simple, direct, devastating. They didn't know because he hadn't made a scene, hadn't yelled or confronted or caused a disruption. He just watched, and then he'd left, quietly, the way he did everything. But Keanu Reeves had never been quiet about the things that mattered. And this, he decided in that moment, watching a man be discarded like trash because he didn't fit the aesthetic, this mattered. The $50 bill sat on table 14. Ashley picked it up eventually, pocketed the change, left Brad his share of the tip. Neither of them thought about it again. It was just Tuesday morning. Just another customer. Just another day at Elysee. Just the last normal day before everything changed. Keanu walked west on Rodeo Drive with the kind of measured pace that came from not wanting to spook someone. The morning sun hit the storefronts at an angle that made the glass shine like mirrors. Gucci, Prada, Valentino. Names that meant something to people who needed names to mean something. He passed them without looking, his eyes scanning ahead. The man with the cardboard sign was half a block up, walking with that particular shuffle that came from feet that hurt, from shoes that didn't fit right or had worn through at the sole. He was heading toward the intersection with Wilshire, where the commercial district started to bleed into something slightly less polished, slightly more real. Keanu picked up his pace just enough to close the distance. Not running, not rushing, just walking with purpose. When he was about 15 feet behind, he called out, keeping his voice low, non-threatening. "Excuse me, sir." The man turned, and Keanu saw the immediate tension in his shoulders. The wariness. That look that came from being approached too many times by people who wanted to move you along, or arrest you, or tell you that you were doing something wrong just by existing. Keanu stopped, kept his distance, held up both hands slightly, gesture of peace. "I'm not here to hassle you. I promise. I saw what happened back there, at the cafe." The man's eyes narrowed, assessing, trying to figure out what this was. Another suit with a different approach? Someone with a camera looking for content? LA was full of people who wanted to document poverty for their social media, to prove they cared without actually doing anything about it. "What do you want?" "Nothing. I just want to talk. Maybe buy you breakfast, if you're hungry." The man shifted his weight. The sleeping bag under his arm, the cardboard sign. His whole life compressed into things he could carry. "I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's breakfast. And honestly, I could use the company. My meeting just fell through, and I hate eating alone." There was a long pause. Across the street, a Tesla hummed past silently. A woman in yoga clothes walked by with a golden retriever that had a collar worth more than the average person's weekly groceries. The absurdity of Los Angeles distilled into a single moment. The man's shoulders dropped slightly. Not relaxed, but less defensive. "You're not a cop." "No, not a cop. Not a social worker. Not a journalist. Just someone who saw something that didn't sit right with me." Another pause. The man studied Keanu's face, and there was something there, a flicker of recognition maybe, but it didn't hold. People didn't expect to see movie stars on the street, so they didn't see them. The brain edited reality to match expectations. "There's a McDonald's 2 blocks that way," the man said finally. "I can get something there." Keanu shook his head gently. "I was thinking somewhere we could actually sit down. Talk. I know a place on Wilshire. It's not fancy, but the food's good. Real food. I'll look like this." The man gestured at himself. His jacket, military issue but decades old, stained and patched. His pants held up with a rope instead of a belt. His boots, the sole separating from the upper on the left one. "Places don't let me sit down. This place will." Something in Keanu's voice, the certainty of it, made the man hesitate. Like this wasn't a promise being made lightly. Like it was something that would happen because Keanu would make it happen. "Why do you care?" It was the question Keanu had been asking himself since he watched that interaction through the cafe window. Why did he care? He'd seen homeless people 1,000 times in LA. Had given money, had volunteered at shelters, had donated to organizations. But this felt different. Maybe because he'd watched it happen in real time. Watched someone be erased, dismissed, threatened with police because they were inconvenient. "Because I think everyone deserves to be seen," Keanu said quietly. "And I watched them look right through you like you weren't there." The man's jaw tightened. A muscle twitched in his cheek. For a second, Keanu thought he might walk away. But then he nodded, once sharp. "Okay, breakfast. But I'm not telling you my life story for a meal." "Fair enough. I'm not asking for one." They walked together, Keanu matching the man's slower pace. He could feel the stares from people passing by. The cognitive dissonance of seeing someone who looked like Keanu walking with someone who looked like this man. LA was segregated in 1,000 invisible ways. And one of them was that these two types of people didn't occupy the same space unless one was giving the other money through a car window. "What's your name?" Keanu asked after half a block. The man was quiet for a moment. "Thomas. Thomas Wells. I'm Keanu." "Like the actor?" "Yeah, like the actor." Thomas glanced over, and this time the recognition clicked. His eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "You're fucking with me." "I'm not. Keanu Reeves wants to buy me breakfast. If you're okay with that, yeah." Thomas laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone who'd stopped being surprised by absurdity, because life had used up his capacity for surprise. "This is the weirdest Tuesday I've had in a while." And I once woke up with a raccoon sleeping on my chest, so that's saying something. Despite everything, Keanu smiled. Raccoons are persistent. Tell me about it. They reached Wilshire and turned north. The restaurant Keanu had in mind was called the Griddle, a breakfast place that had been there for 20 years and somehow survived despite the neighborhood getting more expensive around it. It was the kind of place where actors went when they didn't want to be actors, where people actually ate instead of performing eating. But as they got closer, Keanu reconsidered. The Griddle was casual, but it was also popular. There'd be people with cameras. Someone would recognize him, and then they'd notice Thomas, and it would become a thing. A spectacle. That wasn't what this needed to be. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts, found the name he was looking for, Sandra Levy. He'd met her years ago at some charity function. She owned a place on Cannon Drive, upscale but not pretentious. They talked for an hour about her mother's immigration story from Poland. She told him if he ever needed anything, just call. Tom had tested that offer. He dialed. She picked up on the third ring. Keanu Reeves. As I live and breathe. I was beginning to think you only called when you needed something. Sandra, I'm sorry to do this, but I need a favor. Name it. I'm 10 minutes from your restaurant. I have someone with me who needs a good meal and a place to sit without being judged. Can you help? There was a pause. Sandra was smart. She read between lines for a living in this town. Someone who might not look like a typical Cannon Drive customer. Yeah. Back in trance. Come through the kitchen. I'll have a private table ready. Thank you. Keanu, you don't have to thank me. Just get here. He hung up. Looked at Thomas. Change of plans. Better spot. But we have to go in through the kitchen. Thomas raised an eyebrow. The kitchen. Trust me. They walked the 10 minutes in relative silence. Thomas kept glancing at Keanu like he was trying to figure out if this was real or if he'd finally lost it completely. Keanu kept his head down, hands in his jacket pockets, just another guy walking in L.A. The back entrance to Sandra's restaurant, the Ivy on Cannon, was an unmarked door between a dumpster and a delivery bay. Keanu knocked twice. A young man in chef's whites opened it, looked confused, then saw Keanu, and his confusion turned to understanding. Mr. Reeves, Sandra said you were coming. This way. They followed him through a kitchen that smelled like rosemary and roasting meat and fresh bread. Chefs worked at stations with the focused intensity of surgeons. A few looked up, saw Keanu, did double takes, but no one said anything. Professional kitchen. You didn't break rhythm. Sandra was waiting in the hallway that connected the kitchen to the dining room. 58 years old, gray hair worn long, black dress that was elegant without trying. She hugged Keanu briefly, then turned to Thomas and extended her hand. You must be Keanu's friend. I am Sandra. Welcome to my restaurant. Thomas stared at her hand for a second, then shook it. His grip was uncertain, like he'd forgotten how handshakes worked. Thomas, I'm not sure why I'm here. You're here because you're hungry and my food is good. That's reason enough. She led them through a side door into the main dining room, but not to the main dining room. There was a small private section, separated by a bamboo screen, used for celebrities who wanted to eat without being photographed or business people who needed discretion. A table for 4, but Sandra had set it for 2. White tablecloth, real silverware, cloth napkins, a small vase with a single lily. Thomas stood at the edge of the table, not sitting. Ma'am, I appreciate this, but I can't afford. Sandra waved him off. You're Keanu's guest. Seat, eat. Don't think about money. Keanu pulled out a chair, gestured. Please, seat. Thomas sat slowly, like the chair might break under him or disappear. He put his sleeping bag and cardboard sign on the floor next to him, kept one hand on them, a tether to the things he could trust. Sandra handed the menus. I'll have someone bring water. Take your time deciding. She left. The section was quiet, insulated from the noise of the main dining room. Thomas looked around like he was in a museum, afraid to touch anything. This is too much, he said quietly. It's breakfast. This isn't breakfast. I don't even know what this is. Keanu opened his menu. It's a place where you can eat without being hassled. That shouldn't be too much. That should be normal. Thomas opened his menu, and Keanu watched his eyes move over the options. Eggs Benedict, Belgian waffles, smoked salmon, prices that weren't listed, which meant they were high enough that listing them would feel crass. Thomas's hand trembled slightly. A server appeared, young woman with kind eyes. She poured water into crystal glasses, didn't react at all to Thomas's appearance. "Good morning. Can I start you gentlemen with coffee?" "Please," Keanu said. "2 coffees." She left. Thomas picked up the water glass, drank half of it in one go. When he set it down, his eyes were wet. "I haven't sat at a table like this in 6 years." Keanu didn't say anything. Sometimes there was nothing to say. "I used to have a life. A normal life. House. Job. Wife. Daughter." Thomas's voice was quiet, factual, like he was reading a police report. "I was a mechanic. Good mechanic. 20 years at the same shop in Torrance. Then I got deployed." "Your military?" "Marines. Iraq. 2005. I was there for 8 months before." He trailed off. His hand went to his temple, touched it unconsciously. "IED. I was in a Humvee. I don't remember the explosion. I remember before, and I remember waking up in Germany 3 days later." Keanu leaned forward slightly, listening with the kind of attention most people had forgotten how to give. "They said I was lucky. Only a concussion. Some hearing loss. Could have been worse. A lot of guys got worse. But the thing they didn't tell me, or maybe they did and I couldn't hear it yet, was that the concussion wasn't the problem. The problem was what it did to my head, to my brain. I started having episodes. Panic attacks. Couldn't sleep. When I did sleep, I'd wake up screaming. My wife tried. God, she tried. But I wasn't the same person. I was angry all the time. At nothing. At everything." The server came back with coffee, poured it carefully, left a small pitcher of cream, walked away. Thomas wrapped both hands around the mug like he was cold. "I lost the job. Couldn't focus. Made mistakes. Dangerous mistakes. Shop owner let me go. Told me to get help first, come back when I was ready. But I didn't know how to get help. VA had a wait list. 9 months. Who waits 9 months when your life is falling apart now?" He took a sip of coffee, closed his eyes. "This is good coffee. Yeah. My wife left. Took my daughter. I don't blame her. I wasn't safe to be around. Not because I'd hurt them. I never hurt them. But because I was hurting myself and they had to watch." She filed for divorce. I didn't fight it. Figured she deserved better. Thomas set down the mug. "Lost the house in the divorce. Moved into an apartment. Lost that when I couldn't pay rent. Moved into my car. Lost that when I couldn't pay registration and it got towed. And then it's just, you're on the street. And once you're on the street, everything gets harder. Can't get a job without an address. Can't get an address without a job. Can't get help without ID. Can't get ID without an address. It's a circle, and you just keep going around and around until you stop trying." Keanu's throat felt tight. "Have you stopped trying?" Thomas looked at him, really looked at him, and there was something fierce in those pale blue eyes. "I'm still here, aren't I? Still waking up. Still asking for help. Some people say that's giving up. I say it's the hardest fucking work I've ever done." The server came back. "Are you ready to order?" Thomas looked at the menu again, overwhelmed. Keanu saw it and intervened gently. "What sounds good to you? What did you used to like?" "I used to love my wife's pancakes. She made them from scratch. Buttermilk. Blueberries." Keanu looked at the server. "He'll have the buttermilk pancakes with blueberries. I'll have the same. Any sides? Bacon. Sausage. Hash browns. Fruit. Everything." The server smiled, coming right up. She left. Thomas shook his head. "That's too much food. Then we'll take it to go. Share it with someone who needs it." Thomas laughed, a real laugh this time. "You're a weird dude, you know that?" "I've been told." They sat in silence for a moment. Comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Outside the bamboo screen, the restaurant hummed with conversation. The clinking of silverware. The sound of people living lives that felt normal to them. "That guy at the cafe," Thomas said finally. "The manager. He wasn't the first. Won't be the last. You learn to expect it. That doesn't make it okay. No, but it makes it easier. When you expect the worst, you're not disappointed. Is that how you want to live? Expecting the worst?" Thomas thought about it. "No, but I don't know how to expect anything else anymore." Keanu pulled out his phone again, unlocked it, opened his notes app. "Tell me something. If you could go back to work, what would you do?" "I'm a mechanic. It's all I know." Do you still have your certifications? Somewhere. Maybe. I don't know what happened to my paperwork. It was in storage, but I couldn't pay the fees. They auctioned everything off. Keanu typed something. What shop did you work at? Martinez Auto in Torrance. What? More typing. And your full name? Date of birth. Thomas rattled them off, confused. Keanu typed everything, then made a call. Put on speaker so Thomas could hear. It rang twice. A voice answered, professional, friendly. Hope Foundation, this is Carol speaking. Icaro. My name is Keanu Reeves, and I'm calling about making a significant donation to your organization. There was a pause. I'm sorry, did you say Keanu Reeves? Yes, ma'am. The actor? Yes. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, we're huge fans. My daughter made me watch The Matrix 17 times. Okay. Let me get Director Cohen on the line. Please hold. Muzak played. Thomas stared at the phone like it was a grenade. What are you doing? Helping. I told you I don't want charity. This isn't charity. This is fixing a broken system. Just listen. The Muzak cut off. A new voice, male, older, careful. Mr. Reeves? This is David Cohen, Director of Hope Foundation. I have to say, this is unexpected. Mr. Cohen, I want to make a donation to fully fund your operating costs for 1 year. I understand you run shelter services, meal programs, and reintegration support for homeless individuals in Los Angeles. Silence. Then, carefully, like he was testing if this was real. Yes, that's correct. Our annual operating budget is approximately $680,000. We're currently funded at about 40% capacity through grants and private donations. I'll transfer the full amount by end of business today. $680,000, with one stipulation. What stipulation? You have programs to help people get back on their feet? Job training, placement services? We do, but they're underfunded. We can only help a fraction of. Not anymore. I want those programs fully operational. And I want you to add someone to your priority list. His name is Thomas Wells. Former Marine, mechanic, currently displaced. He needs help with documentation, certification renewal, and placement. Thomas's face had gone white. He was shaking his head, mouthing no, but Keanu kept going. Cohen's voice had changed. Professional, but emotional. Mr. Reeves, I don't know what to say. This changes everything for us. Don't say anything. Just help him, and everyone else you can. That's all I'm asking. We will. We absolutely will. Mr. Wells, are you there? Thomas couldn't speak. He nodded, then realized that didn't work on a phone call. I'm here. Sir, come by our office tomorrow. 10 a.m. We're at 4th and Main downtown. Ask for me personally. We're going to help you. I promise. Keanu ended the call. Set the phone down. Thomas was crying now, not trying to hide it, tears running down his weathered face into his beard. Why? It came out as a whisper. Why would you do this? Because that guy at the cafe was right about one thing. You deserve help. You deserve a chance. You served this country, and it failed you. Someone needs to make that right. I can't pay you back. I don't want you to pay me back. I want you to get back on your feet. Get a job. See your daughter again. Live a life. That's the payment. The food arrived. Mountains of pancakes, golden and perfect, studded with blueberries. Bacon crispy enough to shatter. Hash browns that looked like they'd been cooked by someone who cared. The server set it all down with a flourish. Enjoy, gentlemen. Thomas looked at the food, at Keanu, at the restaurant around them, at the phone that had just changed his life. And then he picked up his fork, hands still shaking, and cut into the pancakes. He took a bite, chewed slowly, swallowed, and smiled. A real smile, the first one Keanu had seen from him. These are almost as good as my wife's. Almost. Nobody makes them like she did. But these are close. They ate in silence. The kind of silence that was full instead of empty. And for the first time in 6 years, Thomas Wells had breakfast at a table, like a human being, like someone who mattered. Because for this one morning, someone had decided he did. After breakfast, Keanu made another call. Thomas sat across from him, still looking dazed, like he'd been hit by something gentle but overwhelming. The remains of their meal sat between them. Thomas had eaten everything on his plate and half of what Keanu couldn't finish. There were to-go boxes prepared, which Thomas had already carefully packed and placed next to his sleeping bag. Food for later. Food for tomorrow. Old habits. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. Carl's office. Hey, this is Keanu. Is Carl available? A pause. Keanu Reeves? Yeah. Holy shit. Sorry. Sorry. That was unprofessional. Hold on. The line clicked to hold music. Some jazz station, upbeat and incongruous. Thomas was looking out the window now, watching people walk by on Cannon Drive. His fingers drummed against the table, nervous energy or maybe just disbelief working its way through his system. Keanu. Carl Johnson's voice boomed through the speaker, big and warm like the man himself. Brother, how long has it been? 2 years. About that. Since the John Wick press tour. You let me take that Mustang for a spin. Still think about that car. Anyway, what can I do for you? Don't tell me the Porsche is giving you trouble again. The Porsche is fine. I'm calling about something else. You still running Precision Motors? All 6 locations, yeah? Why? You hiring mechanics? Carl laughed. Always hiring mechanics. Good ones are impossible to find. Everyone wants to be a YouTube influencer now. Nobody wants to actually learn a trade. Why? You looking for a career change? Not me, but I know someone. 20 years experience. ASE certified, or he was. Specializes in German cars. Did a lot of work on high-end vehicles. Porsche, BMW, Mercedes. Okay, I'm listening. He's had some rough years. Lost his certifications, lost his documentation. He's going to be working with Hope Foundation to get everything renewed. But I'm asking if you'd be willing to give him a shot once he's got his papers in order. There was a pause. Carl wasn't stupid. He could read between lines. When you say rough years, he's a Marine, Iraq veteran, PTSD, lost everything. He's been on the street. The pause stretched longer. Keanu could hear calculation happening, risk assessment, the business part of Carl's brain weighing liability and insurance, and whether this was worth the potential headache. Then Carl sighed. You vouch for him. Edo. Then send him my way. Have him call my office, ask for me directly. We'll start him on a trial basis, see how he does. If he's half as good as you say, we'll make it permanent. Thomas's head snapped around. He'd been listening, but not quite believing. Now his eyes were wide, his mouth slightly open. Carl, I appreciate this. Hey, we all need a break sometimes. And you've never steered me wrong. What's his name? Thomas Wells. Thomas Wells. Got it. Have him call Monday. He will. Thanks, Carl. Don't mention it. And Keanu? Come by sometime. Not for business. Just to hang out. We'll take some bikes up the PCH. I'd like that. They hung up. Keanu set the phone down. Thomas was staring at him with an expression that cycled between gratitude and disbelief and something that might have been anger. You can't just fix my life in an hour. I didn't fix your life. I opened some doors. You still have to walk through them. I don't even have my certifications anymore. I don't have any paperwork. Everything's gone. Hope Foundation will help you get replacements. It'll take time, but they know how to navigate the system. And if I can't do the work anymore, it's been 6 years. My hand shakes sometimes. What if I'm not good enough? Then you get good again. You practice. You remember. Muscle memory doesn't disappear, it just sleeps. Thomas ran his hands through his hair, pulled at it slightly. A gesture of frustration or maybe just overwhelm. I don't understand why you're doing this. I told you. No, I get the words you're saying. I don't understand the why behind them. You don't know me. I could be a con artist. I could be lying about everything. For all you know, I'm going to take your help and disappear, sell everything, buy drugs. Keanu leaned back in his chair. Are you going to do that? No. Then that's not something I need to worry about. But how do you know? I don't. Not for certain. But I've gotten pretty good at reading people over the years. And I don't think you're lying. I think you're exactly who you say you are. A guy who got dealt a bad hand and did the best he could with it. Thomas's jaw worked. He looked down at his hands, calloused and scarred from years of work and years of survival. I wanted to die. 6 months ago. I had it all planned out. Walk into the ocean at Santa Monica. Just keep walking until I couldn't walk anymore. I stood there at the edge for 2 hours. Couldn't do it. Not because I wanted to live, but because I couldn't even succeed at that. The words hung in the air. Sandra appeared at the edge of the bamboo screen, started to enter, saw the expressions on their faces, and quietly retreated. I'm glad you didn't, Keanu said softly. Why? What's the point? I'm 54 years old. Half my life is gone. The good half. What's left? I don't know. But I think maybe you should stick around and find out. Thomas wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand. You talk like it's that simple. It's not simple. It's the hardest thing in the world. But you're still here. That means something. They sat in silence. Outside the bamboo screen, the restaurant continued its rhythm. Plates clinking. Conversations flowing. Life happening for people who didn't have to think about whether it was worth living because it just was automatically assumed. Finally, Thomas spoke. What do you want from me? Nothing. Everybody wants something. Okay, then I want you to show up at Hope Foundation tomorrow at 10. I want you to call Carl's office on Monday. I want you to try. That's what I want. And if I fail, then you fail. But at least you'll fail with a full stomach and clean clothes. Thomas blinked. Clean clothes? Keanu checked his watch. An old Rolex, not the expensive kind, the kind his mother had given him 20 years ago. We have time. There's a Nordstrom about 10 minutes from here. Let's get you some things. I can't accept. Thomas, I'm going to be very direct with you. Right now, the way you look, it's going to make everything harder. Getting your ID. Interviewing at Hope Foundation. Eventually interviewing with Carl. Fair or not, people judge. And if we can remove that barrier, we should. So I'm asking you to let me help with this. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because the world is shallow and we might as well use that to your advantage. Thomas's hands were shaking again. I don't know how to let people help me. Then learn. Because you're going to need help. From Hope Foundation, from Carl, from a lot of people. You can't do this alone. Nobody can. That's not weakness. That's just being human. Thomas closed his eyes. Breathed deep. Nodded once, sharp. Okay. But nothing expensive. I don't need designer shit. Deal. Keanu paid the bill. Sandra came over as they were getting ready to leave, handed Thomas a business card. You ever need a meal, you come here. Anytime. Ask for me. You understand. Thomas took the card like it was made of glass. Thank you, ma'am. Sandra. Call me Sandra. They left through the front door this time. Walked back out into the Los Angeles morning. The sun was higher now, getting toward late morning. The heat was building. Thomas carried his sleeping bag and cardboard sign and the to-go boxes. The sum total of his possessions. Nordstrom was on the other side of Wilshire, in a shopping complex that catered to people with too much money and not enough problems. The building was glass and steel and imposing. Thomas stopped at the entrance. I can't go in there. Why not? Look at me. I'm looking at you. I see someone who deserves clothes that fit and shoes that don't have holes in them. Come on. Keanu walked in first. Thomas followed reluctantly, and immediately the atmosphere changed. The cool air conditioning, the smell of expensive perfume and new fabric, the soft lighting designed to make everything look better than it was. A saleswoman approached, her smile professional and warm until she saw Thomas. Then the smile went plastic. Can I help you, gentlemen? Yeah. Keanu pulled out his phone, checked the name Maria had texted him. I'm looking for Clarissa Montgomery, personal stylist. The saleswoman's eyebrows went up slightly. Do you have an appointment? She's expecting me. Tell her Keanu Reeves is here. The plastic smile cracked. Real surprise underneath. Of course. One moment. She walked away quickly, heels clicking on the polished floor. Thomas stood rigidly, like he was waiting for someone to tackle him. Other shoppers were glancing over, that LA skill of looking without seeming to look. Assessing. Judging. A woman appeared from the back, moving fast. Late 40s, black, elegant in a way that seemed effortless. She wore a simple navy dress and glasses with interesting frames. Her eyes went to Keanu first, recognition immediate, then to Thomas. No judgment, just assessment, professional and quick. Mr. Reeves. Clarissa Montgomery. Your assistant called. Said you needed help with a full wardrobe. For my friend here. Thomas Wells. Clarissa extended her hand to Thomas. Mr. Wells. Pleasure to meet you. Thomas shook her hand, awkward. Mom. Let's start with the basics. What size shoe do you wear? I don't. 11, I think. Maybe 12 now. My feet have spread out. Okay. And your measurements? Do you know them? Thomas shook his head. Clarissa smiled. Not a problem. That's what I'm here for. Follow me. She led them into a private area, sectioned off from the main floor. A small room with a couch, a mirror, a changing area. There was water and coffee on a side table. Music played softly, something instrumental and calming. Mr. Wells, I'm going to take some measurements. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. Clarissa pulled out a measuring tape and got to work. She was quick and professional, calling out numbers to herself, jotting them down on a tablet. Thomas stood still, uncomfortable with the attention, but enduring it. Okay, I have what I need. Now, tell me about your lifestyle. What do you need these clothes for? Thomas glanced at Keanu, uncertain. Keanu nodded encouragement. I'm going to be interviewing. For social services. And then hopefully for a job. Mechanic work. Perfect. So we need interview clothes and work clothes. What about casual wear? Day to day. I don't have day to day. Clarissa didn't miss a beat. You will. So let's plan for it. I'm thinking we start with basics. Good jeans, durable. Some work pants, Dickies or Carhartt, something that can take abuse. Button-down shirts, mix of casual and interview appropriate. A jacket for cold weather. A lighter jacket for spring. Good boots for work. Shoes for interviews. Underwear, socks, undershirts. How does that sound? Thomas was overwhelmed. That's a lot. It's what you need. Trust me. For the next hour, Clarissa worked like a professional athlete. She pulled clothes from different sections, brought them to the private room, had Thomas try things on. Jeans that actually fit. Work pants in navy and khaki. Shirts in blues and grays and white. A Carhartt jacket, thick and warm. A lighter windbreaker. Boots, Red Wing built to last. Dress shoes, simple black leather. Thomas stood in front of the mirror wearing dark jeans, a gray button-down, and the boots. He looked different. Not like a different person, but like a version of himself he'd forgotten existed. Someone who belonged. Someone who could walk into a room without apologizing for taking up space. How do you feel? Clarissa asked. Thomas didn't answer immediately. He just stared at his reflection. I look like I used to. You look like you should. Keanu sat on the couch, watching. There was something happening here that was bigger than clothes. Some kind of reconstruction. Thomas kept touching the fabric of a shirt, running his fingers over the stitching of the jacket, like he was making sure it was real. They bought everything Clarissa had picked out. She added basics without asking. A pack of boxer briefs, a pack of undershirts, socks, a belt, even a simple watch. Everyone needs to know what time it is, she said. The total came to $4,200. Keanu handed over his card without looking at the number. Clarissa arranged for everything to be packaged. Mr. Wells, do you have somewhere to store these? Thomas's face fell. No, I don't. She didn't hesitate. I'll have everything delivered. Where should we send it? Thomas looked at Keanu. Keanu thought for a moment, then gave Clarissa his home address. Send it there. Thomas, you can pick it up whenever you need. Or I'll hold on to it until you have a place. After everything was arranged, they had Thomas change into one of the new outfits in the store. Jeans, a blue button-down, the boots, and the Carhartt jacket. His old clothes went into a Nordstrom bag that he clutched tightly, unwilling to throw away even the things that had nearly disintegrated. They left through the main entrance. Thomas walked differently now, shoulders back slightly, head up, like the clothes had given him permission to occupy space again. On the sidewalk outside, Thomas stopped, turned to Keanu. His eyes were red, but he wasn't crying. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. This is more than anyone's ever done. More than I thought anyone would do. Then maybe it's time to adjust what you think people will do. Thomas laughed, shaky but real. You're going to make me believe in humanity again. That's dangerous. Good. Be dangerous. Keanu's phone buzzed. A text from Maria. Hope Foundation confirmed. Director Cohen will see Thomas personally tomorrow at 10 a.m. Also, I'm seeing some photos online of you at the Ivy. With someone. Is everything okay? He texted back. Everything's fine. Tell Cohen thank you. He looked at Thomas. You have somewhere to sleep tonight? Yeah. There's a spot under the overpass on Lincoln. It's pretty safe. I've been there before. When's the last time you slept in a bed? Thomas thought about it. Real bed? Maybe 4 years. Shelter beds are different. Those are just cots. Keanu made a decision. Come on. One more stop. Where? Hotel. You're getting a real night's sleep before your appointment tomorrow. Keanu, no. You've done enough. More than enough. It's a hotel room. It's not a kidney. Let me do this. Thomas looked like he wanted to argue, but the exhaustion in his eyes won out. Just one night. Just one night. They walked to the Beverly Wilshire because it was close and because Keanu knew the manager. The doorman saw them coming, saw Keanu, and immediately opened the door with a professional smile. If he thought anything about Thomas's earlier appearance despite the new clothes, he didn't show it. Inside, the lobby was all marble and gold and quiet wealth. Thomas looked around like he'd entered a cathedral. Keanu approached the desk. The clerk recognized him immediately. Mr. Reeves, what a pleasure. How can we help you today? I need a room for one night. For my friend here. The clerk's eyes flicked to Thomas, then back. Of course. We have a standard king available. That'll work. Keanu provided his credit card. The clerk processed everything efficiently, handed Thomas a key card in a small envelope. Room 412. Fourth floor. Elevators are to your right. Checkout is at noon tomorrow. If you need anything at all, just call the front desk. Thomas took the key card like it was made of something precious. They rode the elevator up in silence. Found a room. Keanu opened the door for him. The room was beautiful. King bed with white linens. Flat-screen TV. Desk. Window with a view of Rodeo Drive. Bathroom with a shower that had multiple heads and marble counters. Thomas walked in slowly. Set his bag down. His new clothes were being delivered to Keanu's place, so all he had was the sleeping bag and the to-go boxes and the plastic bag with his old clothes. He sat on the edge of the bed, bounced slightly, testing it. This is real. It's real. I'm going to get it dirty. That's what hotel laundry is for. Thomas looked at Keanu, and there were tears in his eyes again. Why are you doing this? Really, I need to understand. Keanu sat in the desk chair. This morning, I watched someone treat you like you weren't human, like you were a problem to be solved or removed. And I realized that I've been doing the same thing my whole life. Maybe not actively, but passively. Seeing homeless people and feeling bad for a second and then moving on. Donating money, so I could feel like I was helping without actually connecting. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of living in a city where people sleep on the streets and we all just accept it. Like it's weather. Like it's unavoidable. It kind of is unavoidable. Maybe. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. And it doesn't mean we stop seeing people. You fought for this country. You gave years of your life. You came back broken, and instead of being helped, you were discarded. That's not okay. That's never going to be okay. So if I can do something about it, even for one person, I'm going to. Thomas wiped his eyes. One person doesn't change the system. No, but one person changes one person's life. And that matters. They sat in silence. Outside the window, Los Angeles did what it always did. Moved and hummed and pretended that everything was fine. Get some sleep, Keanu said, standing. Take a shower. Order room service. Watch TV. Just rest. You have a big day tomorrow. Will I see you again? Yeah, I'll check in. Make sure you made it to Hope Foundation. Make sure everything's moving forward. Why would you do that? Because we're friends now. Thomas smiled, tired and genuine. Friends? Yeah. Okay. Keanu headed for the door. Thomas called after him. Keanu. He turned. Thank you. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it. You saved my life today. You saved your own life by not walking into that ocean. I just opened some doors. Same thing, maybe. Maybe. Keanu left. Took the elevator down. Walked through the lobby and out into the afternoon heat. His phone was buzzing with texts now. Maria, his agent, a few friends who'd seen the photos from the Ivy. He ignored them all. He walked back to where he'd parked his Porsche, blocks away from Elysee. Got in. Sat for a moment with his hands on the steering wheel. Then he pulled out his phone and opened notes. Started typing. The facts. The details. Everything he'd seen and heard this morning. The way Derek had threatened Thomas with police connections. The way the staff had laughed. The way Thomas had walked away, shoulders hunched, carrying everything he owned. He wrote for 20 minutes. Let the anger fuel the words. Made it clear and factual and devastating. Then he opened a new email. Addressed it to his publicist. Attached the note. Added a single line. I want this published. Everywhere. Tomorrow morning. No edits. No softening. Exactly as I wrote it. He hit send. Started the car. Drove home. And somewhere in Beverly Hills, Derek Stanford was having a drink after work, celebrating a successful day of managing Elise, completely unaware that his entire world was about to end. Keanu's house sat in the hills above Los Feliz, tucked behind gates that didn't announce themselves, the kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. He bought it 15 years ago, back when the neighborhood was less discovered, less gentrified. It was Mediterranean style, terracotta, and white stucco, surrounded by olive trees and bougainvillea that had gone wild in the California sun. He pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, sat for a moment in the silence that came after. His phone had stopped buzzing. Either people had given up or decided to wait until he was ready to respond. He appreciated the latter, suspected it was mostly the former. Inside, the house was cool and quiet. High ceilings, minimal furniture. He'd never been one for accumulation. A couch, a table, some chairs. Books stacked on shelves that he'd actually read. Movie posters from projects he'd loved, not the big ones, the small ones nobody remembered. A photo of him and River Phoenix from My Own Private Idaho premiere, both of them young and stupid and infinite. He set his keys in a bowl by the door, walked to the kitchen, poured himself water from the tap, not the filtered stuff, just regular water. Drank it standing at the sink, looking out the window at the city below. From up here, Los Angeles looked almost beautiful. The smog was just haze. The inequality was just density. Distance made everything softer. His phone rang. Not a text this time, an actual call. He looked at the screen. Maria. He answered. Hey yourself. Maria's voice was careful, the tone she used when she was trying to figure out what kind of mood he was in. Want to tell me what happened today? I helped someone. I gathered that from the photos. TMZ has you at the Ivy with a homeless man. People are interested. Of course they are. Keanu, I'm not calling to hassle you. I'm calling because I know you. And when you do things like this, you do them all the way. And I want to make sure you've thought through what comes next. He set down the glass. What comes next? The email you sent to Jennifer. The note. She forwarded it to me. She's waiting for confirmation before she sends it out, but she seems to think you're serious. I'm serious. It's going to be a big story. Good. Keanu. Maria's voice shifted, less careful, more direct. She'd been with him long enough to skip the diplomacy when it mattered. That cafe you're calling out, Elise, is not some corporate chain. It's a small business, owned by one woman. You publish this, you're going to destroy her. She destroyed Thomas first. Did she? Or did her manager make a bad call, and she wasn't even there? She created the culture where that bad call felt acceptable. That's the same thing. Maria was quiet for a moment. He could hear her breathing, thinking. Okay, I'm not going to talk you out of this, but I want you to be clear about what you're doing. This isn't just helping one person anymore. This is making a statement, and statements have consequences. I know. Do you? Because once this goes public, you can't take it back. And people are going to have opinions. Some will support you. Some will say you're grandstanding, using someone's suffering for PR. Some will say you're being too harsh. You ready for all of that? Keanu walked to the living room window. The city spread out below, millions of lives layered on top of each other. I watched a man get threatened with arrest because he asked for help. I watched him walk away like he was used to it, like that was just Tuesday for him. If me talking about it causes some discomfort for the people who made him feel that way, I'm okay with that consequence. And Thomas? You talked to him about this? About his name being in the news? That stopped him. He hadn't. In all the chaos of the day, the meals and the shopping in the hotel, he hadn't asked Thomas if it was okay to make his story public. He'd assumed. An assumption was exactly the kind of thing he'd been angry at others for. No, I didn't. Then maybe start there. Call him. Make sure he's okay with this. Because his life is about to change too, and he should get a say in how. She was right. Of course she was right. I will. Thanks, Maria. That's what you pay me for. Well, that and keeping your schedule, which you just completely destroyed, by the way. You missed a meeting with Dan and Emma about the anniversary screening. Shit. I forgot. I smoothed it over. Told them you had a family emergency. They understood. I owe you. You owe me a lot. Add it to the tab. And Keanu? For what it's worth, I think what you did today was good. Just make sure it stays good. They hung up. Keanu stood at the window, phone in hand. The Beverly Wilshire was too far away to see from here, but he knew where it was. Knew Thomas was in room 412, probably still trying to process everything that had happened. Probably wondering if it was real or if he'd wake up under the overpass and find out it was a dream. He needed to call, but first, he needed to think through what he was going to say. How to ask permission without making Thomas feel like he owed him anything. How to give him agency in a situation where Keanu had already made most of the decisions. Before he could dial, the doorbell rang. He wasn't expecting anyone. Hadn't ordered food. He walked to the front door, checked the video screen. A delivery van sat in the driveway. The driver, young guy in a Nordstrom uniform, held several large bags and boxes. Keanu opened the door. Hey, delivery for Wells? The store said to bring it here. Yeah, that's right. I'll take it. The driver helped him bring everything inside. 6 bags, 2 boxes. All of Thomas's new clothes, neatly folded and organized. Keanu signed the tablet, tipped the driver $50, watched him leave. He stood in his foyer, surrounded by bags, and something about it hit him. This was someone's entire wardrobe. Everything Thomas would need to rebuild a life. And it fit in 6 bags. The simplicity of it. The way a life could be compressed or expanded depending on circumstances that had nothing to do with the person living it. His phone rang again. Different number this time. He didn't recognize it, but something made him answer anyway. Hello. Is this Keanu? The voice was male, older, uncertain. Yes. Who's this? David Cohen. From Hope Foundation. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Your assistant gave me this number. Of course. Is everything set for tomorrow? That's actually why I'm calling. I wanted to thank you personally. What you're doing, the donation, it's going to change everything for us. We've been operating on fumes for months, turning people away because we just don't have the resources. And now, you don't have to thank me. I do, though, because you didn't just write a check. You followed up. You're personally invested in making sure Thomas gets help. That's rare. Most donors, they give money and disappear. They don't want to see the actual work, the actual people. It's easier that way. Keanu sat on the arm of his couch. I think that's the problem. We've made it too easy to not see people. You're right. And I've been doing this work for 23 years, and I can tell you, the invisibility is the hardest part. Not the lack of housing or food or services. It's the way society looks through people like they're ghosts. Like they've already stopped existing. How do we fix that? Cohen laughed, but it was tired. If I knew that, I'd have fixed it by now. But I think what you did today is part of it. Seeing Thomas. Actually seeing him. Treating him like a person instead of a problem. That's the foundation. Everything else builds from there. He said something today. He said he almost walked into the ocean 6 months ago. That he wanted to die. Yeah, we lose about 3 people a week in LA County. Homeless individuals who just give up. The statistics don't capture it because there's no way to track it. But those of us in the field, we know. We see the faces that stop showing up at the shelters or the meal lines. And we wonder, how do you do this job? How do you wake up every day knowing you can't save everyone? Because I can save someone. And on the good days, I do. Thomas, he's going to be a good day. I can feel it. He's got skills, he's got experience, and now he's got support. That's the trifecta. Most people we see, they're missing at least one of those. Usually 2. What about the others? The ones you can't help. I do what I can. And I try not to let the weight of what I can't do stop me from doing what I can. Some days I'm better at that than others. They talked for another 10 minutes. Cohen explained the process for tomorrow, how they'd help Thomas get his paperwork sorted, connect him with their counselor for PTSD resources, start the certification renewal process. It was systematic and thorough, and gave Keanu some measure of comfort that Thomas would be in good hands. After they hung up, Keanu finally called the Beverly Wilshire, asked to be connected to room 412. The phone rang 6 times before Thomas answered, his voice thick with sleep. Hello, Thomas? It's Keanu. I'm sorry, did I wake you? Yeah, but it's okay. I think I needed to sleep anyway. I've been out for, what time is it? About 6. Shit, I've been out for like 4 hours. I don't even remember lying down. That's good. Your body needed it. Yeah, I guess. There was rustling, the sound of Thomas moving. This bed is insane. I forgot beds could feel like this. Did you order room service? I looked at the menu. $28 for a burger. I can't do that to you. Thomas, order the damn burger. It feels wrong. It would feel more wrong to me if you didn't eat. Please, order whatever sounds good. That's what it's there for. A pause. Okay, maybe the burger. And fries. Is it weird that I really want fries? It's not weird. Order extra. Thomas laughed quietly. You're a strange dude, Keanu. I've been told. Keanu took a breath. Listen, I'm calling because I need to talk to you about something. I did something today that I probably should have asked your permission for first. The tone shifted. What did you do? I wrote about what happened this morning. At the cafe. What I saw, what I heard. And I sent it to my publicist. She's going to release it tomorrow morning. Silence. Long enough that Keanu thought the call might have dropped. Thomas? You still there? I'm here. I'm just processing. You wrote about me. I wrote about what happened to you. About how you were treated. I used your name. And I should have asked if that was okay before I did it. Why did you do it? Because I think people need to know. I think we've gotten too comfortable ignoring things like this. And I have a platform. Feels irresponsible not to use it. More silence. Then, carefully, what does this mean? For me, it means people are going to know your story. Some of them are going to be supportive. Some are going to judge. There might be media attention. Journalists might try to find you. It's going to be complicated. Complicated how? I don't know exactly. But I wanted you to be prepared. And if you want me to pull it, I will. Right now, one phone call and it doesn't go out. Your life, your choice. Thomas didn't answer immediately. Keanu could hear him breathing, thinking. Outside the window, the Los Angeles sunset was starting, the sky turning orange and pink in that way it did when the pollution was just right. Can I ask you something? Thomas said finally. Anything. Why me? There's probably 1,000 people in this city with the same story. Worse stories, even. What made you decide I was the one worth helping? You weren't. You were just the one I happened to see. And that's kind of the point. Any one of those 1,000 people deserves what happened today. They deserve to be seen, to be helped, to be treated like they matter. You're not special because your story is worse. You're special because you're human. And so are they. But you can't help all of them. No, but I can help you. And I can talk about what I saw in a way that maybe makes other people think twice before they treat someone the way that manager treated you. That's not nothing. Thomas was quiet again. If you publish this, that cafe is going to get destroyed, aren't they? Probably. And you're okay with that? Are you? I don't know. Part of me wants them to hurt, the way they made me hurt. But another part of me thinks they're just people. People who made a mistake. Does that mistake deserve to end their business? Keanu sat forward. That's a fair question, and I don't have a perfect answer. But I think accountability matters. I think when you create an environment where treating people like you got treated is acceptable, there should be consequences. Not to be cruel, but to make sure it doesn't keep happening. It's going to keep happening anyway, even if that place closes. Someone else will do it somewhere else. Maybe, but maybe one less person will do it after seeing what happens. Maybe one manager will think twice. Maybe one business owner will talk to their staff about treating people with dignity. I don't know, but I have to believe that saying something is better than saying nothing. Thomas sighed, long and heavy. Okay, publish it. You sure? No, but do it anyway. If my story can make someone else's life even a little bit easier, then what happened to me matters for something. And I'd like it to matter. It matters. Even without the story, it matters. To you, maybe. To me. But to the world? The world didn't give a shit this morning. Maybe they will tomorrow. Maybe. Keanu, yeah. Thank you for asking. Most people wouldn't have. Most people should. They talked for a few more minutes. Keanu confirmed the appointment time for tomorrow, made sure Thomas knew how to get to the Hope Foundation office, offered to send a car. Thomas declined, said he'd take the bus, said he needed to prove to himself he could do normal things again. After they hung up, Keanu called his publicist Jennifer directly. Sent out. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. All the usual outlets. Twitter, Instagram, everything. Jennifer's voice was all business. You're sure? I'm sure. It's going to be huge. You know that, right? I know. Okay. Then I'll make it happen. Anything else you want to add? Yeah. At the end, add links. To Hope Foundation, to the VA crisis line, to local homeless services. Make it useful, not just outrage. Smart. I'll do that. Keanu. Yeah. This is either the best thing you've ever done or the biggest shitstorm of your career. Maybe both. Probably both. I'll have my team monitor response. Try to get some sleep tonight. Tomorrow's going to be intense. Thanks, Yin. He hung up, looked at the bags from Nordstrom piled in his foyer. Thought about Thomas in that hotel room, probably staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how his life had changed so completely in one day. Keanu picked up one of the bags, carried it to his guest room, started organizing the clothes in the closet there, hung up the shirts, folded the jeans, arranged the boots, made it look like someone lived here, someone who mattered, someone who had a place to keep their things. When he was done, he stood in the doorway looking at the room. It was ready for when Thomas needed it, for when he got back on his feet and needed a place to transition, for whatever came next. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Thomas. The hotel phone has Wi-Fi. I figure out how to text. I just wanted to say thank you again. And also I ordered the burger, and a steak, and dessert. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. Everything sounded so good. Keanu smiled. Texted back, good. Eat it all. Order breakfast in the morning before you leave. Go big. You're going to regret this. I really won't. Okay. Good night, Keanu. Good night, Thomas. Keanu walked to his own bedroom, lay down on top of the covers, still dressed, stared at the ceiling, thought about how strange life was, how you could wake up planning one kind of day and end up living a completely different one, how a simple decision to have coffee could spiral into something that mattered. His phone lit up with notifications. Twitter was already starting to buzz. Someone had leaked the story early. Or maybe just the photos from the Ivy had gotten people speculating. Either way, it was beginning. He turned the phone face down, closed his eyes. Tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. And when it did, he'd deal with it. The way he dealt with everything else in his life. Quietly, directly, and with the kind of conviction that came from knowing he'd done the right thing, even if the right thing was messy. In room 412 of the Beverly Wilshire, Thomas Wells ate a $50 steak and cried tears that tasted like hope. And in the hills above Los Feliz, Keanu Reeves fell asleep thinking about justice and whether it was ever really possible, and decided that even if it wasn't, you had to try anyway. Because trying was the only thing that separated humans from the machinery of cruelty that wanted to grind people like Thomas into dust. And Keanu Reeves had never been very good at watching machinery win. The story went live at 8:03 a.m. Pacific time. 3 minutes late because Jennifer's team had been making last-second adjustments to the links, making sure every URL worked, every resource was accessible. 3 minutes that felt like hours to the publicist who knew what was about to happen. The post went up simultaneously across platforms. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, though Keanu barely used it. The text was simple, direct, devastating. No PR-polish. No carefully crafted corporate speak. Just Keanu's words, raw and clear. Yesterday morning, I watched something that I can't stop thinking about. I was having coffee at a cafe in Beverly Hills when I saw a homeless veteran named Thomas Wells asking for help outside. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't bothering anyone. He was simply sitting with a cardboard sign, asking for whatever people could spare. While I watched, the manager of the establishment came outside and threatened him. Not with violence, but with something worse. With the police. With his connections. With the casual cruelty that comes from knowing the system will protect you and punish him. The manager told Thomas that if he didn't leave, he would call his friend, a captain in the Beverly Hills PD, and have Thomas cited for loitering or public nuisance. He made it clear that Thomas's presence was bad for business, that his existence was incompatible with the aesthetic the cafe was selling. Thomas left. He gathered his sleeping bag and his sign, and he walked away with the kind of defeated posture that told me this wasn't the first time. that this was just Tuesday for him. I followed him. I bought him breakfast. I learned his story. Marine Corps Veteran. Iraq. PTSD. Lost everything because the systems that were supposed to catch him failed. And I realized that what I'd watched wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of something much bigger. We live in a city, in a country, where we've normalized the dehumanization of people who are struggling. We've made it acceptable to treat homelessness as an aesthetic problem instead of a humanitarian crisis. We've created a culture where calling the police on someone for being poor is considered good business. That's not okay. It's never going to be okay. And I'm tired of being quiet about it. I'm not writing this to shame anyone specifically, though I think shame is appropriate. I'm writing this because I think we need to talk about what we accept, what we tolerate, what we participate in actively or passively when we look away from people like Thomas. Yesterday, I helped one person. I connected him with resources, bought him clothes, gave him a chance to rest. It felt good, but also felt insufficient, because Thomas is one of 60,000 homeless people in Los Angeles County, and most of them won't get lucky enough to have a movie star notice them. That's the problem. It shouldn't require luck. It shouldn't require celebrity intervention. It should be the baseline of how we treat each other. So I'm asking you to think about the Thomas in your life. The person you walk past on your way to Starbucks. The person sleeping in the doorway of your building. The person holding the sign at the intersection. They're not set dressing. They're not problems. They're people. See them. Help them if you can. And if you can't help directly, then at the very least, don't make their lives harder. Don't call the police because someone's poverty makes you uncomfortable. Don't threaten people for existing in spaces you think they don't belong. We can do better than this. We have to do better than this. At the bottom of this post are links to organizations that actually help. Hope Foundation, La Mission, Veterans Affairs Crisis Line, PATH. If you want to do something, start there. Donate. Volunteer. Show up. And to the manager at Elysee who threatened Thomas yesterday, I hope you read this. I hope you think about what you did. And I hope you understand that your actions have consequences. We're all human. We all deserve dignity. Even, and especially, when we're at our most vulnerable. Keanu. The response was immediate and explosive. Within 10 minutes, the post had been shared 10,000 times. Within 30 minutes, 50,000. By 9 a.m., it was trending on Twitter with 3 different hashtags. Hashtag LSE shame, hashtag Keanu Reeves, and hashtag Thomas Wells. The comments section filled faster than Jennifer's team could monitor it. Thousands of people sharing their own stories. Veterans who'd experienced similar treatment. Homeless advocates who'd been saying these things for years. Celebrities adding their voices, retweeting, amplifying. But also the other voices. The ones saying Keanu was virtue signaling. That he was using Thomas's story for PR. That he was a hypocrite for living in a mansion while criticizing others. That he didn't understand business or property rights or how hard it was to run a restaurant in an expensive neighborhood. The backlash was immediate too, just smaller, drowned out by the wave of support, but still there, still vicious. And all of this was happening while Thomas Wells sat on a bus heading downtown to his appointment at Hope Foundation, completely unaware that his name was being spoken by millions of people. He'd woken up at 7, disoriented by the softness of the bed, the quiet of the room. For a moment he'd panicked, thinking he'd been arrested, that he was in a holding cell. Then he remembered. The hotel. Keanu. Yesterday. He'd ordered breakfast like Keanu told him to. Pancakes again, because they'd been so good yesterday. Bacon. Orange juice. Coffee. He'd eaten at the desk by the window, watching Beverly Hills wake up below him, watching people who'd never slept on a street walk to their jobs and their lives. The food had been perfect. Everything about the room had been perfect. And Thomas had felt, for the first time in years, like maybe he deserved perfect things. Not because of anything he'd done, but just because he was alive. Because he was trying. He'd showered for 20 minutes, using all the expensive soaps and shampoos, watching the dirt of 6 years swirl down the drain. He'd shaved with the razor the hotel provided, carefully, his hands steadier than he expected. And then he'd put on the new clothes. Jeans that fit, a clean button-down, navy blue, the boots that didn't hurt his feet. He'd looked at himself in the mirror and seen someone he recognized. Not the young Marine who'd deployed to Iraq. Not the mechanic who'd had a house and a family. But someone in between. Someone who could maybe become those things again, in a different form. He'd left the hotel at 8:30, thanking the desk clerk who looked at him with kindness instead of suspicion. He'd walked to the bus stop on Wilshire, paid the fare with coins he'd saved, took a seat in the back. And now, at 9:15, sitting on a metro heading downtown, he had no idea that the internet was on fire with his story. The Hope Foundation office was on 4th Street, in a converted warehouse that had been renovated with grant money and volunteer labor. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and welcoming. The walls were painted in warm colors. There were couches in the waiting area, not plastic chairs. A coffee maker with actual coffee, not the burned sludge most service organizations served. Thomas walked in at 9:55, 5 minutes early. The old military training, still there under everything else. Early is on time. On time is late. A woman at the front desk looked up, smiled. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I have an appointment. 10 o'clock. With David Cohen. My name is Thomas Wells." Her smile widened. "Mr. Wells, we've been expecting you. Have a seat. Director Cohen will be right out." Thomas sat on one of the couches. There were magazines on the coffee table, current issues, not for 5 years ago. A small water cooler in the corner. Everything designed to make people feel human instead of processed. He waited 3 minutes. Then a door opened and a man emerged. Late 50s, gray hair, warm eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up. He crossed the room with his hand extended. "Thomas, I am David Cohen. It's an honor to meet you." Thomas stood, shook his hand. "Honor? I don't know about that." "Ido. Come on back. Let's talk." David's office was small but organized. Shelves full of binders and files. A desk with 2 monitors. Photos on the wall of people. Lots of people, success stories. Thomas could tell by their smiles. The kind of smiles people wore when they climbed out of something dark. David gestured to a chair. Thomas sat. David sat across from him, not behind the desk, eliminating the barrier. "So, Keanu told me a bit about your situation, but I want to hear it from you. Where are you right now, and what do you want to be?" Thomas took a breath. "Right now, I am nowhere. I've been on the streets for 6 years. Before that, I was a mechanic. Before that, I was a Marine. I have PTSD. I have no documentation, no ID, no certifications, nothing. I'm starting from zero." "Okay, zero is a place. It's not a good place, but it's a place we can work from. Where do you want to be?" "I want a job, a place to live. I want to see my daughter again. I want to stop feeling like I'm drowning every single day." David nodded, taking notes on a legal pad. "Those are all achievable. It's going to take time, and it's going to take work, but they're achievable. Let's start with the immediate needs. Documentation. Do you have a birth certificate?" "I did. I don't know where it is now." "That's okay. We can get a replacement." "What state were you born in?" "Ohio." "Cleveland." "Good. We have contacts there. We can request a certified copy. That'll take about 2 weeks. While we're waiting for that, we can start the process for a California ID. We'll need proof of address, though." "I don't have an address." "You can use ours. We're set up for that. It's legal. It's what we do." David made another note. "Now, your military records. You said Marines. What years?" 98 to 2006. "And you were honorably discharged?" "Medical discharge. After the IED." "Okay, that's good, actually. Medical discharge means you're eligible for VA benefits. Have you been receiving any?" Thomas shook his head. "I tried. Years ago. The process was, I couldn't navigate it. Too many forms. Too many appointments. I gave up." "You're not giving up this time. We're going to walk you through it. Every step." David leaned forward. "Thomas, I want to be straight with you. This is going to be hard. The bureaucracy is designed to be exhausting. It's designed to make people quit. But we're not going to let that happen. You're going to have support the whole way." For the first time, Thomas felt something loosen in his chest. Not hope, not yet, but maybe the possibility of hope. "Keanu said you could help with my certifications. My mechanic's license. We can. We have a program that helps with professional recertification. It's grant-funded. We cover the costs. We help you study. We make sure you're ready. You said you specialized in German cars. Yeah. Porsche, BMW, Mercedes. I worked at a shop that catered to the high-end market. David smiled. There's good money in that here. LA has more luxury cars per capita than anywhere except maybe Monaco. If you can get certified again, finding work won't be the problem. Keanu already set me up with a job. Guy named Carl Johnson. Precision Motors. David's eyebrows went up. Carl Johnson? I know Carl. He's donated to us. Good guy. Really good guy. If he's willing to hire you, that's huge. He said I need my certifications first. Then we'll get them. I'm going to set you up with Maria Gonzalez. She runs our vocational program. She'll coordinate everything. Classes, testing, the works. David made more notes. Now housing. Where are you staying right now? Nowhere permanent. Last night Keanu got me a hotel room. But that was just one night. David was quiet for a moment, thinking, we have transitional housing. Small apartments, shared facilities, but they're clean and safe. There's a waiting list, but... He picked up his phone, dialed number. Hey, Karen, it's David. That unit that just opened up in the Vermont building, is it still available? It is? Can you hold it for me? I have someone. Yeah, thanks. He hung up. You got a place. It's not the Ritz. Studio apartment, shared bathroom on the floor, but it's yours. Rent is covered for the first 3 months through our housing program. After that, you'll need to contribute based on your income, but by then you should be working. Thomas couldn't speak. His throat had closed up. Everything was happening so fast. Too fast. Yesterday he'd been on the street, and today he had an address, a job prospect, a path forward. Why are you doing this? He managed finally. Because it's my job, and because Keanu Reeves made a very generous donation that allows me to do my job properly. David smiled. Between you and me, that donation is going to help a lot more people than just you. You're the first, but you won't be the last. I need to pay him back. I don't think he wants to be paid back. I think he wants you to pay it forward. When you're on your feet, when you're stable, help someone else. That's the payment. David spent the next hour going through everything. Appointments scheduled, forms to fill out, resources to access. He gave Thomas a binder with all the information organized, tabs for each category. Documentation, housing, employment, healthcare, Baba Nafits. It was overwhelming, but also concrete. Steps, a plan. At 11:30, David walked Thomas out to the main area where Maria Gonzalez was waiting. She was younger, maybe 40, with kind eyes and the air of someone who'd seen it all and still managed to care. Thomas, this is Maria. She's going to be your point person for vocational stuff. Maria shook his hand. Nice to meet you. David tells me you're a mechanic. Used to be. Going to be again. Come on. Let me show you our training center. She led him down a hallway to a large room that had been converted into a workshop. Tools organized on pegboards. A few cars in various states of repair. 2 other people working, supervised by an instructor. We partner with local shops. They donate cars that need work, we fix them, they sell them and donate a portion back to us. It's win-win, and it gives our people real-world experience. Maria handed him a folder. Here's the study guide for your ASE recertification. I want you to review it. We'll set up a tutoring schedule, get you caught up on anything that's changed in the past 6 years. Then we'll register you for the test. How long does that take? If you study hard? Maybe 2 months. 3 to be safe. But Carl knows that. He's willing to wait. Thomas looked at the workshop, the tools, the cars. Everything he'd lost. Right here, waiting for him to claim it again. I don't know if I remember how to do this. You will. It's like riding a bike. Frustrating at first, then it clicks. Maria's phone buzzed. She looked at it, frowned. Huh, what? You're trending on Twitter. What does that mean? Maria showed him her phone. The screen showed Keanu's post, thousands of retweets, thousands of comments. And there, in the text, his name. Thomas Wells. Oh my God. Yeah, Keanu posted about what happened yesterday. It's kind of a big deal. Thomas read through the post, his hands shaking. Saw his story, his pain, laid out for the world. Saw Keanu's anger on his behalf. Saw the links to help organizations. Saw the hashtags. Everyone knows. Everyone in the world knows. Not everyone, but a lot of people. Maria watched him carefully. Is that okay? Are you okay? Thomas didn't know how to answer. Part of him felt exposed, violated, like his worst moments had been packaged for consumption. But another part felt seen, actually seen, not as a problem or a statistic, but as a person whose suffering mattered. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Ask me tomorrow." David appeared in the doorway. "Thomas, there are some reporters outside. They're asking to talk to you." "You don't have to. We can have them removed. It's your call." Thomas looked at the phone again, at the numbers climbing. Shares, comments, people caring, or at least performing care. He thought about what Keanu had said, that his story could maybe make someone else's life easier. What do I say to them? Whatever you want. Or nothing. You don't owe them anything. Thomas thought about it. About the manager at Elysee who'd threatened him. About the countless other times he'd been moved along, ignored, erased. About the people still on the streets who didn't have a celebrity advocate. "I'll talk to them, but only if I can say what I want to say. No editing." David smiled. "I'll make sure of it." They set him up in a conference room with better lighting. 3 reporters came in, cameras and microphones. Local news. They asked him to tell his story. So he did. He talked about Iraq, about the IED, about coming home broken and not knowing how to ask for help, about losing his family, his job, his home, about 6 years on streets, about being threatened yesterday for the crime of being visible. And then he talked about Keanu, about breakfast, about clothes, about being treated like a human being for the first time in years. "He didn't have to help me," Thomas said, looking directly at the camera. "He didn't know me. I was just some guy on the street. But he saw me, actually saw me. And that's all any of us wants. To be seen." The reporter, a young woman with earnest eyes, asked, "What do you want people to take away from your story?" Thomas thought about it. "I want them to know that homelessness isn't a choice. It's a failure of systems, of support, of compassion. And I want them to know that it can happen to anyone. I was a Marine. I had a career. I had a family. And I still ended up on the street. So next time you see someone asking for help, remember that. They're not lazy. They're not scamming. They're just trying to survive. And maybe, if you can, help them. Not because you'll get anything out of it, but because it's the right thing to do." The interview ended. The reporters thanked him, left to file their stories, which would air during the evening news and add more fuel to the fire that was already consuming Elysee. Thomas sat in the conference room after they left, alone with his thoughts. His phone, the one he'd used to text Keanu last night, buzzed. A message. "Saw you on the news. You did great. Proud of you. K." Thomas typed back with shaking fingers. "Everything's happening so fast. I don't know if I'm ready for this." The response came immediately. "You don't have to be ready. You just have to show up. And you're showing up. That's enough." Thomas stared at the message. Showed up. Yeah, he was showing up. For the first time in years, sighed, almost nothing. It weighed everything. As he walked out of Hope Foundation into the Los Angeles afternoon, he passed a man sitting on the sidewalk with a cardboard sign. Thomas stopped, reached into his pocket. He had $12, the last of what he'd saved. He gave the man 10. "Get something to eat." The man looked up, surprised. "Thanks, brother. We're all in this together." Thomas kept walking. Behind him, the man stared at the money like it was a miracle. And maybe it was. Small miracles. The kind that happened when people decided to see each other. When they decided that someone else's suffering mattered as much as their own comfort. When they decided to show up. Derek Stanford's phone started ringing at 9:47 a.m. He was at the gym, mid-set on the bench press, 225 pounds hovering above his chest. His spotter, a trainer named Marcus who he paid $150 an hour, was counting. 7, 8. "Come on, Derek, 2 more. 9. The phone buzzed in his gym bag across the room. Then buzzed again. And again. Derek pushed the barbell up on the 10th rep, racked it with Marcus's help, sat up breathing hard. "Good set. You're getting stronger." Derek nodded, reaching for his towel. The phone was still buzzing. He walked over, pulled it out. 17 missed calls. 32 texts. His screen was lighting up like a Christmas tree. The first text was from his sister. "WTF did you do?" The second was from his roommate. "Dude, check Twitter right now." The third was from a number he didn't recognize. "You're a piece of shit." Derek's stomach dropped. He opened Twitter. The first thing he saw was his own name trending. Not at Derek Stanford, just Derek Stanford. Below it, hashtag LSE shame. He clicked. The top tweet was from Keanu Reeves. Posted an hour ago. Already at 300,000 retweets. Derek read it. Felt the blood drain from his face. Read it again to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. The manager of the establishment threatened him with police, with connections, with casual cruelty. No. Marcus came over. You good, man? I have to go. Derek grabbed his bag, didn't even change out of his gym clothes, just threw on a hoodie and ran for the parking garage. His phone kept buzzing. More texts, more calls. He ignored them all, fumbling with his keys, dropping them twice before getting his car unlocked. His Audi R8 leased for $1,000 a month. He'd gotten it specifically for the image, for pulling up to Elysee and having people notice. Now he threw his gym bag in the passenger seat and peeled out of the garage, cutting off a Tesla, getting honked at. He called Victoria. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Same thing. Texted, "We need to talk right now." No response. He drove toward Beverly Hills, weaving through traffic, his mind racing. This couldn't be happening. It was one homeless guy, one interaction. He'd handled hundreds of them the same way. That's what you did. You protected the business. You maintained standards. That's literally what Victoria paid him to do. Except now Keanu fucking Reeves was calling him out by name. Well, not by name, but everyone would know who the manager was. The staff knew. The regular customers who'd been there knew. It would take about 30 seconds for someone to connect the dots and start tagging him. He checked Twitter again at a red light. His hands were shaking. Someone had already posted, "The manager is Derek Stanford." Here's his LinkedIn, with a screenshot, his professional photo, his job title, his whole career laid out for the mob. The comments underneath were vicious. This guy's face screams, "I play golf with Captain Morrison." Of course he has a Rolex in his profile pic. Someone should call his employer. Oh wait, the internet already is. Imagine being so insecure you have to threaten a homeless veteran to feel powerful. Derek's phone rang. Victoria. Finally. He answered on speaker, taking a right onto Wilshire. "Tell me this isn't real." Her voice was ice. Derek had never heard her sound like this. Even when they'd had health inspections or bad reviews or staffing disasters, she'd been controlled, professional. This was different. This was panic wrapped in fury. "Victoria, I was just doing my job." "Your job?" "Your job was to create a PR nightmare that's going to destroy us." I didn't know Keanu Reeves was sitting there. How was I supposed to know? You weren't supposed to threaten a homeless veteran with your golf buddy regardless of who was watching. Jesus Christ, Derek, do you hear yourself? We've done this 100 times. You've never had a problem with it before. Silence. Long enough that Derek thought she'd hung up. Then quiet and deadly. "What did you just say?" Derek realized his mistake. "I didn't mean. You just try to make this my fault. You just try to implicate me in your decision to act like a fascist prick on the one day that a beloved movie star happened to be documenting it. I wasn't acting like. Get to the restaurant. Now, we need to do damage control before this gets worse." "How could it get worse?" "I don't know, Derek, but I'm sure you'll find a way." She hung up. Derek threw his phone into the passenger seat, where it immediately started buzzing again. He ignored it. 5 more minutes to Elysee. 5 minutes to figure out what the hell he was going to say. When he pulled up, there were already people outside. Not protesters, not yet, but journalists. 3 news vans parked across the street. Cameras. Reporters talking to people on the sidewalk, getting reactions. Derek parked in the back in the employee lot. Tried to enter through the kitchen entrance, but there was a reporter there too. Young guy with a microphone. "Derek Stanford? Can we get a comment on the Keanu Reeves post?" No comment. "Do you regret how you treated Thomas Wells?" I said no comment. Derek pushed past him, nearly knocking the camera, and got inside. The kitchen staff looked up. Nobody smiled. Nobody greeted him. They just stared, then went back to their prep work. He climbed the stairs to Victoria's office. She was on the phone, her back to the door, staring out the window at Rodeo Drive. She held up one finger without turning around. "Wait." Derek waited. He could hear her side of the conversation. "I understand that, but we're working on a response." "Yes, I've read it." "No, I don't think that's necessary. We're not closing." "We're not." She paused, listened. Her shoulders dropped. I see. I understand. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up, turned around. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. No muck-up. Her hair pulled back messily. Still wearing yoga clothes, like she'd been at home when this exploded and hadn't had time to change. That was our insurance company. They're canceling our policy. They can't do that. They can, actually, reputation clause. Excessive negative publicity affecting their brand association. We have 30 days. Derek sat down without being invited. This is insane. I was protecting the business. You were threatening a veteran. I was asking someone to move along. That's not a crime. No, but it is cruel. And cruelty, when it's documented by one of the most beloved actors in the world, tends to have consequences. Victoria sat behind her desk. I've had 67 phone calls this morning. Reporters, customers canceling reservations, employees asking if they still have jobs, 2 suppliers saying they're reviewing their contracts with us. It'll blow over. This stuff always blows over. Does it? Or does it just move on to the next target while the first target bleeds out? Victoria pulled up something on her computer. Our Yelp rating has dropped from 4.8 stars to 1.2 in 3 hours. Google reviews, same thing. Someone created a change.org petition to have our business license revoked. It has 40,000 signatures. Derek felt sick. What do we do? We? There is no we, Derek. This is you. You're firing me. You think I have a choice? Every article about this identifies you as the manager. Your name is attached to this. If I keep you, I'm endorsing what you did. What I did. You created the culture. You told us to keep the street clear, to maintain the aesthetic. I never told you to threaten anyone with police connections. I never told you to treat a human being like garbage. That was your choice. Your words. Your cruelty. Derek stood up. This is bullshit. You're throwing me under the bus to save yourself. I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. I'm taking responsibility. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. And part of that responsibility is acknowledging that I hired the wrong person, that I prioritized the wrong things, that I built a business that valued aesthetics over humanity. But I'm not the one who threatened Thomas Wells. You did that, and you have to own it. I want severance. You're not getting severance. You're lucky I'm not billing you for the damage you've caused. Derek's face flushed red. You can't do this to me. I just did. Clean out your locker. Security will escort you out. Security? Are you fucking kidding me? No, I'm not. Because I don't trust you to leave quietly. And we've had enough scenes for 1 week. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Derek hadn't even heard them approach. One of them, a guy named Raphael who Derek had always been friendly with, wouldn't meet his eyes. Mr. Stanford, please come with us. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. But he went. Because what else could he do? He followed them downstairs to the employee locker room, emptied his locker into his gym bag, a spare suit, his good shoes, a bottle of cologne, the detritus of a life that had imploded in 3 hours. As they walked him through the kitchen to the back door, the staff watched again. Brad was there, the barista, arms crossed. Ashley was there, the hostess, looking scared. Jessica, the floor manager, had her phone out, recording. Really, Jessica? You're going to record this. It's not personal, Derek. It's evidence. In case you try to sue or something. I made you floor manager. I got you that promotion. Yeah, and you made me complicit in treating people like shit. So thanks for that. Derek wanted to scream. Wanted to flip a table, or punch a wall, or do something to release the pressure building in his chest. But the security guards were right there, and the camera was rolling, and everything he did now would become content. They escorted him to his car, watched him get in, waited until he drove away. Derek made it 2 blocks before he had to pull over. His hands were shaking too badly to drive. He sat in a parking lot behind a Whole Foods and finally looked at his phone. 83 missed calls, 247 texts. His Instagram had been flooded with comments. His LinkedIn had been brigaded with fake endorsements. Derek is great at threatening the vulnerable. Highly recommend Derek for positions requiring no empathy. His email was worse. Messages from friends asking what happened. Messages from former colleagues distancing themselves. Messages from strangers calling him everything from fascist to a sociopath. And at the top, an email from a reporter at the Los Angeles Times requesting an interview. Derek opened it. Read it. The reporter, a woman named Christina Alvarez, had written a profile piece. She talked to Thomas Wells, to David Cohen at Hope Foundation, to other homeless individuals in Beverly Hills who'd been harassed by businesses. She was writing about systemic dehumanization, about how cities design themselves to erase poverty instead of addressing it. And Derek was the face of it. The example. The bad guy. He tried to think of a way out. An apology, maybe. A public statement explaining that he'd been trained this way, that he was just following orders, that he wasn't actually a monster. But even as he thought it, he knew how it would sound. Like every villain in history trying to justify their actions by claiming they were just doing their job. His phone rang. His sister again. He answered this time. Laura. Derek, what the hell happened? I don't know. I was just doing my job. Your job was to threaten homeless veterans? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Because Keanu Reeves says you threatened to have someone arrested using your police connections. Did you say that? Derek closed his eyes. I might have said something like that. Jesus Christ, Derek. What? Because that's what you do. That's what everyone does in this city. You can't have people camping outside luxury businesses. It drives away customers. So you admit it. You threatened him. I didn't threaten him. I made it clear that staying there wasn't in his best interest. Using the threat of police violence. That's threatening him, Derek. Whose side are you on? The side that doesn't bully people for being poor. What happened to you? You used to be decent. Derek didn't have an answer. When had he stopped being decent? Was it gradual, working in an industry that rewarded performative superiority? Or had it always been there, this capacity for cruelty, just waiting for permission? Laura, I'm going to lose everything. Maybe you should. Maybe that's what happens when you forget that other people matter. She hung up. Derek sat in his Audi in a Whole Foods parking lot and felt his life disintegrating. His job was gone. His reputation was destroyed. His social media was a war zone. And he couldn't even go home because someone had posted his address on Twitter and the comments were talking about paying him a visit. He opened Twitter one more time, scrolled through the hashtag, found a video someone had posted from this morning. Thomas Wells, being interviewed on the news, telling his story, talking about Iraq, about PTSD, about losing everything, and then talking about Derek. The manager, he wasn't evil. He was just disconnected, like he couldn't see me as a person, just a problem. And I think that's the real issue. Not that people are cruel on purpose, but that they've stopped seeing each other as human. We're all just obstacles or opportunities or aesthetic choices. Derek watched the whole interview. Watched Thomas be more gracious and thoughtful than Derek had been in his entire tenure at Elysee. Watched him take the high road while Derek spiraled. And something cracked inside him. Not redemption, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. That he'd been so focused on protecting an image, an aesthetic, a bottom line, that he'd forgotten the thing that actually mattered. People, human beings, with stories and pain and dignity that existed regardless of how much money they had or where they slept at night. Derek opened a note on his phone, started typing. An apology. Not a PR apology, not a sorry if you were offended apology, but a real one. Admitting what he'd done, acknowledging the harm, accepting the consequences. He didn't know if it would matter. Probably wouldn't. The internet had already decided who he was. But maybe it mattered to him. Maybe that was enough. He typed for 20 minutes. Read it over. Made it harder on himself, not easier. Removed every excuse, every justification. Left only the truth. Then he posted it on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, everywhere. My name is Derek Stanford. I'm the manager Keanu Reeves wrote about. Everything he said is true. I threatened Thomas Wells. I used my connections and privilege as a weapon. I treated a human being like an inconvenience. And I'm sorry. This apology won't fix anything. It won't undo the harm. But I want to be clear, what I did was wrong. Not wrong because I got caught. Not wrong because a celebrity called me out. Wrong because it was cruel and dehumanizing and exactly the kind of behavior that perpetuates suffering. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for my job back. I'm just saying I was wrong, and I have to live with that. If you're reading this and you've ever treated someone the way I treated Thomas, I'm asking you to stop, to think about what you're doing, to remember that every person you see, regardless of their circumstances, deserves basic dignity. I forgot that, and it cost me everything. But more importantly, it cost Thomas his dignity, even if only for a moment. And that's unforgivable. I'm going to do better. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm going to try. He posted it, put his phone face down on the passenger seat, sat in silence. The internet would decide if it was enough. Probably wouldn't be, but he'd said it anyway, because Thomas was right. They needed to see each other as human. And for the first time in years, Derek Stanford was trying to see himself clearly. What he saw wasn't pretty, but at least it was real. Victoria Hampton sat in her office and watched her business die in real time. The computer screen showed the reservation system, and it was a massacre. Cancellations flowing in faster than she could process them. Lunch service today, 17 reservations down to 4. Dinner tonight, 42 down to 11. Tomorrow, 37 down to 6. People weren't just canceling, they were leaving notes. Can't support a business that treats veterans like trash. We'll be dining elsewhere until management changes. Disgusted by what I read. Never coming back. Her email was worse. 3 major event cancellations. A tech company had been planning a product launch party for 200 people, $50,000 booking. Canceled. A talent agency's annual dinner, $30,000. Canceled. A wedding rehearsal dinner that had been booked for 18 months. Canceled, with a threat of legal action if Victoria didn't refund the deposit immediately. The phone on her desk rang. She didn't want to answer it. Hadn't wanted to answer the last 40 calls. But she did anyway, because that's what you did when you were drowning. You kept swimming even when you knew you couldn't reach shore. Elise, this is Victoria. Ms. Hampton, this is Bernard Rousseau. Victoria's blood went cold. Bernard Rousseau, the restaurant critic from Bon Appetit. The man who'd written the glowing review that had put Elise on the national map 8 years ago. The man whose opinion could make or break a restaurant's reputation. Mr. Rousseau, hello. I'll be brief. I'm writing a follow-up piece about the recent events involving your establishment. I wanted to give you an opportunity to comment. What kind of piece? A re-examination of what luxury dining means. Whether businesses like yours have a responsibility beyond providing excellent food. Whether exclusivity has become a shield for cruelty. Victoria felt her throat tighten. That's not fair. We provide jobs. We support local suppliers. We pay our taxes. We contribute to this community. And yet you created an environment where a homeless veteran could be threatened with arrest for existing near your establishment. I didn't create that environment. Derek Stanford worked for you, represented you, was empowered by you to make decisions on behalf of your business. So yes, Ms. Hampton, you did create that environment. Perhaps not intentionally, but creation isn't always intentional. Sometimes it's the result of 1,000 small choices that accumulate into something monstrous. Victoria wanted to hang up, wanted to scream. Instead, she asked, "What do you want me to say?" The truth. Do you think what happened to Thomas Wells was acceptable? No, of course not. Then why did it happen? Because I wasn't paying attention. Because I was focused on profit margins and Michelin stars and social media engagement. Because I built a business that measured success by exclusivity instead of humanity. Is that what you want to hear? Only if it's true. Victoria looked around her office. At the framed reviews. The photos with celebrities. The awards. All of it meaningless now. All of it tainted by the realization that she'd built something beautiful on a foundation of indifference. It's true. All of it. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. I fired Derek. But that's not enough, is it? That's just cutting off the visible symptom and pretending the disease is cured. No, it's not enough. Then I don't know what is. Tell me. You're the expert. What do I do? Bernard was quiet for a moment. You start by acknowledging that luxury and compassion aren't mutually exclusive, that you can run a successful business without treating people as obstacles. that your bottom line shouldn't come at the cost of someone else's dignity. That sounds nice in theory, but this is Beverly Hills. The customers who come here, they're paying for exclusivity, for an experience that separates them from the masses. How do I provide that without creating exactly the problem you're describing? Maybe you don't. Maybe you rethink what you're selling. Maybe exclusivity based on wealth isn't worth preserving. Victoria almost laughed. So, I should just close? Is that what you're suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking what you think matters more. Your business or your conscience? That's not a fair question. Life isn't fair, Ms. Hampton, asked Thomas Wells. He hung up. Victoria sat holding the dead phone, staring at nothing. Outside her window, a small crowd had gathered. Not protesters exactly, just people. Talking, pointing, taking photos. Élysée had become a landmark for all the wrong reasons. A symbol of everything broken about Los Angeles, about wealth inequality, about the casual cruelty that capitalism required to function. Her computer chimed. Another email. This one from her landlord. The building owner, a real estate investment firm she'd never actually met in person, just signed checks to every month. Dear Ms. Hampton, we've been made aware of recent events involving your establishment. While you're current on rent, we have concerns about the negative publicity affecting other tenants in the building. We ask that you consider whether continuing operations is in everyone's best interest. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to discuss options. Options. That was corporate speak for, we want you out, but we're too polite to say it directly. Victoria pulled up her financial records, bank statements, loan documents, the mortgage on the restaurant that still had 8 years left, the equipment loans, the line of credit she'd taken out last year to renovate the bathrooms. She was leveraged to the ceiling. 1 bad month, and she'd be underwater. 2 bad months, and she'd be bankrupt. This wasn't going to be 1 bad month. This was going to be an extinction event. She thought about calling Mitchell, her lawyer, asking about bankruptcy options. But she knew what he'd say. Chapter 11, reorganization, try to salvage what she could. Months of legal fees she couldn't afford. The humiliation of having her finances picked apart in court documents that would become public record. Or she could just walk away. Declare Chapter 7, liquidate everything and disappear. Take what little money was left and start over somewhere else. Somewhere people didn't know her name. Somewhere she wasn't the villain in a story that had gone viral. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister Elena, the one who never contacted her unless it was serious. Saw the news. Call me. Victoria called. Elena answered on the first ring. Victoria. Jesus Christ. I know. How bad is it? Bad. Terminal, probably. I'm losing everything. Elena was quiet for a moment. Victoria could hear her breathing, thinking. They'd never been close. Elena had gone into teaching, had 3 kids, lived in Pasadena in a house that cost 1/10 of what Victoria had spent on Élysée. They'd chosen different paths, different values, and there had always been an unspoken tension about it. Do you deserve it? Elena asked finally. What kind of question is that? An honest one. Do you deserve what's happening? Victoria thought about Derek threatening Thomas, about the culture she'd built, about the staff laughing, about her own indifference, her focus on lavender costs while a human being was being erased outside her door. Yes, probably. I don't know. That's not an answer. What do you want me to say, Elena? That I'm a monster? That I'm getting exactly what I deserve? Fine. I'm a monster. I built a business that valued money over people. I hired someone who thought threatening veterans was acceptable. I looked the other way 1,000 times because it was convenient. Happy? No, I'm not happy. Sad. Because you used to care about things that mattered. When did I care? When we were kids. When you volunteered at the soup kitchen with Mom. When you talked about opening a restaurant that would serve everyone, not just the rich. When you said you wanted to cook food that brought people together instead of separating them. Victoria had forgotten about that. The younger version of herself who'd had ideals before she'd had a mortgage. Who'd want to feed people, not curate experiences for them. That was a long time ago. It doesn't have to be. You could still do that. Not here, maybe, but somewhere. I'm going to lose everything, Elena. The restaurant. My reputation. Probably my house. I'll be lucky if I'm not bankrupt. So, lose it. Start over. Build something better. I'm 50 years old. I don't have time to start over. Mom was 53 when she went back to school. 60 when she became a nurse. You have time. You just don't have ego left. And maybe that's the point. Victoria felt tears coming. She tried to stop them, failed. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe you can't fix this. Maybe you can only learn from it. They talked for another 20 minutes. Elena didn't offer solutions, just presence. Just the reminder that Victoria was still a person, even if she'd forgotten how to act like one. After they hung up, Victoria opened a new document on her computer. Started typing. Not a press release, not a PR statement. Just words. Honest words. She wrote about building Élysée, about the dream it had been, the monument to achievement, the proof that she'd made it, about how somewhere along the way, the dream had curdled into something else, about how exclusivity had become a drug, how she needed customers to feel special so she could feel successful, and how that had required making other people feel less than. She wrote about Derek, but she didn't blame him. She took responsibility for hiring him, for training him, for creating a culture where his actions felt justified, for being too busy to care about the homeless man outside her window until a movie star made her care. She wrote about Thomas Wells, about how she'd learned more about him from Twitter than she'd ever bothered to learn when he'd been on her doorstep, about how that said everything about her priorities. And she wrote about what came next, the uncertainty, the fear, the knowledge that Élysée, as it currently existed, was finished, that trying to resurrect it would be pointless, like trying to resuscitate a patient who'd already flatlined. She wrote until her hands ached. Then she read it over, made it harder on herself, not easier, removed every hedge, every excuse, left only accountability. Then she did something she hadn't planned to do. She called Keanu Reeves. She didn't have his number, but she had his publicist's contact info from some charity event years ago. She called, left a message. "This is Victoria Hampton from Élysée. I'd like to speak with Mr. Reeves, if possible. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a retraction. I just want to talk. Thank you." An hour later, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Miss Hampton? This is Maria, Keanu's assistant. He's willing to speak with you. Can you hold?" "Yes." Music played. Classical, something by Bach. Then a click, and Keanu's voice, quiet and careful. "Victoria Hampton. Mr. Reeves, thank you for taking my call. Call me Keanu, and I'm not sure what there is to say. Neither am I, but I want to try anyway." Victoria took a breath. "I read your post. Multiple times. And you were right. About everything. About Derek. About the culture. About me. I wasn't trying to destroy you. I know, but you did anyway. Or maybe I destroyed myself, and you just documented it." She laughed, bitter. "I'm going to lose the restaurant. It's over. Reservations are gone. Suppliers are backing out. Landlord wants me gone. I'll be lucky to sell the equipment for pennies on the dollar. I'm sorry. Don't be. I earned this." Victoria looked at her computer screen, at the document she'd written. "I wanted to tell you something. About Thomas. I never saw him. Not really. He was just a problem to be managed. And I'm ashamed of that. Deeply ashamed. Have you told him that?" "No. I don't have the right to bother him with my guilt. Maybe. But maybe he deserves to hear it anyway." Victoria was quiet. "How is he? I saw the interview. He seemed okay. He's getting there. Hope Foundation is helping him. He has housing lined up. Job prospects. He's going to make it. Because of you. No, because of himself. I just opened some doors. You did more than that. You saw him when the rest of us didn't. Including me." Victoria wiped her eyes. "I'm writing a statement. Taking full responsibility. Announcing that Élysée is closing. I wanted you to know before it goes public. You don't have to close. Yes, I do. Not because of public pressure, but because I can't run it anymore. Not the way it was. And I don't know how to run it any other way." Keanu was quiet for a moment. "What if there was another way?" "What do you mean? What if instead of closing, you transformed it? Changed the model? Made it something different? Something better? Like what? I don't know. But you're a talented chef. You built something from nothing once. You could do it again. Just with different values this time." Victoria wanted to dismiss it, but something in his voice stopped her. You really believe that? I believe people can change. I believe intentions matter, but actions matter more. If you're serious about doing better, prove it. Don't just disappear. Do the work. The work of what? Figuring out how to run a business that doesn't require anyone to be invisible. That's the work. They talked for another 15 minutes. Keanu didn't let her off the hook, but he also didn't condemn her. He just listened, pushed back when she made excuses, acknowledged when she told the truth. By the end of the call, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in days. Not hope exactly, but maybe the possibility of hope. The sense that rock bottom wasn't the end, just a place to push off from. After they hung up, Victoria looked at her statement again. Changed the ending. Instead of announcing closure, she announced transformation. A pause in operations while she figured out what Elise could become. A promise to do better. An invitation for ideas. She sent it to her publicist. Post this. Everywhere. No edits. Then she closed her laptop, walked downstairs to the dining room. It was empty now, lunch service abandoned, staff sent home. The marble gleamed in the afternoon light. The table sat perfect and untouched. Beautiful. Empty. Meaningless. Victoria walked to the front door, looked out at Rodeo Drive, at the people passing by, the wealthy ones in designer clothes, the service workers in uniforms, the tourists with cameras, and yes, the homeless ones, the invisible ones, the ones who'd been there all along but she'd never bothered to see. She unlocked the door, stepped outside. There was a woman sitting against the building next door, maybe 60, weathered face, kind eyes. She had a small dog on a leash, some kind of terrier mix. A cardboard sign, homeless. Anything helps. God bless. Victoria walked over, crouched down, the way Keanu had with Thomas. Made herself eye level. I'm Victoria. What's your name? The woman looked suspicious. Why? Because I'd like to know, if that's okay. A pause. Diane. Nice to meet you, Diane. This is my restaurant. Elise. I don't know if you've heard, but we're having some problems right now. I heard. Whole streets talking about it. Yeah, you bet. Listen, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I want to apologize. For all the times you've been here and we've ignored you. Or worse, for being part of a system that treats people like you're invisible. Diane's eyes narrowed. You want something? What do you want? Nothing. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. And I wanted to ask if you're hungry. I have a kitchen full of food that's going to waste. I like to feed you. If you're interested. Why? Because I'm trying to learn how to be better. And it seems like feeding people who are hungry is a good place to start. Diane studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but if this is some kind of publicity stunt, it's not. I promise. It's just dinner. Victoria helped Diane to her feet, brought her inside, the dog too, sat her at one of the best tables, the one by the window, went into the kitchen herself, started cooking. Not fancy food, not food designed to impress. Just food that tasted good and filled you up. Pasta with marinara, garlic bread, salad. Simple, honest. She served Diane herself, sat across from her while she ate. They talked about Diane's life, her 3 kids who didn't talk to her anymore, her diabetes that made living on the street even harder. About the dog, Charlie, who she'd found abandoned and kept because he was the only family she had left. When Diane finished, she wiped her eyes. Thank you. That was the best meal I've had in I don't know how long. You're welcome. Come back tomorrow. I'll make something else. You're really doing this? Feeding people. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm starting with this. 1 meal, 1 person, and we'll see what happens. Diane left with a to-go container of pasta for later. Victoria stood in the empty restaurant, surrounded by luxury she'd spent 15 years building, and felt lighter than she had in years. She didn't know if this would save Elise, didn't know if anything could, but for the first time, she wasn't thinking about saving the restaurant. She was thinking about saving herself, and maybe that was the first step toward building something that actually mattered. 2 weeks passed. The internet moved on the way the internet always did, finding new outrages, new heroes, new villains. But the consequences of that Tuesday morning didn't disappear. They settled in, became permanent, reshaped lives. Thomas Wells sat in the workshop at Hope Foundation, a socket wrench in his hand, staring at the engine of a 2015 BMW 535i that someone had donated. The car had been sitting for 18 months. Owner upgraded to something newer, didn't want to deal with the repairs. Bad fuel pump, corroded battery terminals, possibly a seized alternator. Fixable problems. Thomas knew how to fix problems. Maria stood nearby, observing, her tablet in hand. She'd been tracking his progress for the past 10 days. Watching him remember. Watching muscle memory kick in, hands finding their way to bolts and connectors like they'd never stopped. "How's it feel?" she asked. Thomas loosened a clamp, disconnected a fuel line. "Like riding a bike. Frustrating at first, then it clicks. You said that would happen. Didn't believe it when I said it." He set down the wrench, wiped his hands on a shop towel. "I was scared I'd forgotten everything. That 6 years was too long. Then my brain was too broken." "Your brain isn't broken. It's been through trauma." "That's different, is it?" "Yeah. Broken means it can't work. Trauma means it works differently. You just have to learn the new patterns." Thomas picked up a screwdriver, started removing the alternator mounting bolts. "I had a panic attack yesterday. At the grocery store. Someone dropped something, loud noise, and suddenly I was back in Iraq. Took me 20 minutes to calm down." "Did you use the breathing exercises?" "Eventually. After I'd already made an ass of myself hiding behind the cereal aisle." "You didn't make an ass of yourself. You had a physiological response to a trigger. That's your body trying to protect you. It's exhausting." "I know." Maria made a note on her tablet. "You seeing the counselor this week?" "Thursday, 2 p.m. "Good. Keep going. It gets easier." "Does it?" "Ask me in 6 months." Thomas smiled slightly. Pulled the alternator free, set it on the workbench. The replacement was already there, rebuilt unit, good as new. He installed it methodically, checking connections, making sure everything's seated properly. His hands were steady. "No checking." "Not today." "When's your ASE test?" Maria asked. 3 weeks. November 15th. "You ready?" "Getting there. I've been studying every night. The apartment has Wi-Fi, so I've been watching YouTube tutorials. Things have changed since I left. New diagnostic tools. Computer systems I never worked with. But it's coming back. Carl called yesterday, checking on your progress." Thomas looked up. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you're exceeding expectations. That you're going to pass that test, and when you do, he should snap you up before someone else does." "You said that." "I did. Because it's true." Maria walked over, looked at the engine. "This is good work, Thomas. Clean. Efficient. You know what you're doing." "I used to." "You still do. Stop talking about yourself in past tense." Thomas set down his tools, looked at his hands, scarred and calloused and steady. "I'm living in an apartment. A real apartment. With a door that locks. A shower that's mine. A bed that doesn't fold up. I keep waking up thinking it's a dream. It's not a dream. I know. But 6 months ago, I was sleeping under an overpass. 2 weeks ago, I was getting threatened by some asshole in a Tom Ford suit. And now I'm here. It doesn't feel real. It's real. You made it real. You showed up. You did the work. Keanu made it real. Keanu opened the door. You walked through it. Those are different things." Thomas was quiet. He'd been thinking about that a lot. About agency. About whether he'd saved himself or been saved. Whether it mattered. The counselor at Hope Foundation, a woman named Dr. Patricia Chun, had asked him the same question last week. "Can both things be true?" she'd asked. "Can you have been helped and also helped yourself?" Thomas had said he didn't know. She'd smiled and said, "Then sit with that uncertainty. See what comes up." What came up was gratitude and guilt. Gratitude for Keanu, for David Cohen, for Maria, for everyone who'd shown up when he needed them. Guilt for all the people still on the street who didn't get lucky, who didn't have a celebrity advocate, who would die invisible. "I want to do something," Thomas said suddenly. "Do what?" "For the others. The people still out there. I want to help." Maria smiled. "We have volunteer programs. Once you're stable, once you're working, you can come back. Help others through the same process." "I want to do more than that." "Like what?" "I don't know yet. But something. I can't just take all this help and walk away. It feels wrong." "It's not wrong to accept help, Thomas." "I know, but it's also not enough. Not for me." They worked in silence for a while. Thomas finished the alternator, moved on to the fuel pump. Dropped the tank, which was harder without a lift, but manageable. Replaced the pump, the filter, checked the lines for cracks. Everything systematic. Everything fixable. At noon, Maria's phone buzzed. She looked at it, smiled. "You have a visitor." "Who?" "Come see." Thomas followed her to the front of the building. Through the glass doors, he could see a figure standing outside. Leather jacket, dark jeans, motorcycle parked at the curb. Keanu. Thomas's breath caught. He hadn't seen him since that first day, had only texted a few times, thank yous and updates. He hadn't wanted to be a burden, hadn't wanted to take up more of Keanu's time than he already had. Maria opened the door. "He's been waiting for 10 minutes. Didn't want to interrupt your work." Thomas walked outside. Keanu turned, smiled that same tired smile. Hey yourself. What are you doing here?" "Checking in. Making sure you're okay." "I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm—" Thomas gestured vaguely at the building, at himself, at everything. "I'm alive again. Because of you. Not because of me. Don't do that. Don't diminish it. You saved my life." Keanu shifted uncomfortably. "I just opened some doors." "You opened every door. You paid for everything. You made phone calls. You gave me a chance when nobody else would. That's not nothing." "Okay, then you're welcome." They stood in awkward silence. A city bus rumbled past. Somewhere nearby, a car alarm went off, stopped. The sounds of Los Angeles, constant and chaotic. "You want to see the apartment?" Thomas asked finally. "Yeah, I'd like that." They took Thomas's bus route, which felt important somehow. Not a ride in Keanu's Porsche, but the public transportation Thomas used every day. The normalcy of it. The democracy of sitting next to strangers, all going somewhere, all with their own stories. The apartment was in a converted motel on Vermont, 20 units that Hope Foundation had leased and renovated. Small studios, shared bathrooms, but clean and safe. Thomas's was on the second floor, number 214. He unlocked the door, suddenly self-conscious. The space was tiny, maybe 200 square feet. A bed, a small desk, a mini fridge, a microwave. A window that looked out at the parking lot. But it was his space, his door, his lock. "It's not much," Thomas said. Keanu walked in, looked around. "It's perfect. Liar. I'm serious. This is exactly what you need right now. Safe. Stable. Yours." Thomas sat on the edge of the bed. Keanu took the desk chair. On the desk, study materials for the ASE test were spread out. Manuals. Practice exams. Notes in Thomas's handwriting, careful and precise. "You're studying hard," Keanu observed. "Every night. 3-4 hours. I'm not as sharp as I used to be. Have to work harder to retain things." "That's the PTSD?" "Maybe. Or just age. Or 6 years of survival mode, fry my circuits. Who knows?" Thomas picked up one of the manuals, set it down again. "I'm scared I'm going to fail." "Why?" "Because if I fail the test, I can't work for Carl. And if I can't work for Carl, I can't afford rent. And if I can't afford rent, I'm back on the street. And I don't know if I can survive that again." "You're not going to fail. You don't know that." "No, but I believe it. And you should too." Thomas laughed, sharp and bitter. "Belief. That's a luxury I haven't had in a long time. Then borrow mine until you find yours again." They sat in silence. Outside, someone's music played, bass thumping through the walls. Normal apartment sounds. Normal life sounds. Thomas had missed normal so much it hurt. "Can I ask you something?" Thomas said. "Anything." "Why me?" "Really? I know what you said before, about me being the one you happened to see. But there had to be more to it. You've walked past 1,000 homeless people in your life. What made you stop for me?" Keanu thought about it. "Honestly, I think it was the way you left. After Derek threatened you. You didn't argue. You didn't get angry. You just accepted it. Like you'd stopped fighting. And something about that broke me. Because I've felt that way before. Not about homelessness, but about other things. That moment when you realize fighting is pointless. So you just stop. And I couldn't watch someone else give up. I had given up. I told you that. 6 months ago, I almost walked into the ocean. But you didn't. Only because I'm a coward. That's not cowardice. That's survival. Your body kept you alive even when your brain wanted to quit. That's not weakness. That's strength you didn't even know you had." Thomas's eyes were wet. He wiped them quickly. I saw what happened online. The shitstorm you created. Elysee is closing. I know. You feel bad about that? Keanu considered. No. Should I? I don't know. That manager, Derek, he lost everything. His job. His reputation. I saw his apology. It seemed genuine. It probably was. But genuine apologies don't undo harm. They're just the first step toward not causing more. The owner, Victoria. She called me. Keanu sat up straighter. She did. Last week. Left a voicemail. Said she wanted to apologize in person. I haven't called back. Why not? Because I don't know what I'd say. Part of me wants to tell her to fuck off. That her apology is 10 years too late and only happening because she got caught. But another part of me feels, I don't know, sad for her. Is that stupid? It's not stupid. It's empathy, which is more than she showed you. Yeah, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the only way to break the cycle is to show people the compassion they didn't show you. Keanu smiled. When did you become a philosopher? I've had a lot of time to think. Not much else to do when you're on the street, except think. Thomas stood, walked to the window. I'm thinking about calling her back. Meeting her. Hearing what she has to say. You don't owe her that. I know. But maybe I owe it to myself. To prove I'm not bitter. That I'm not letting what happened to me turn me into someone who can't forgive. Forgiveness is complicated. Everything's complicated. Thomas turned back. You stay in LA for a while? Yeah. I have some meetings next week. What? I want to introduce you to some people. Other folks from the streets. People who helped me when I had nothing. I've been taking them food, giving them money when I can. But I think you could help more. If you wanted to. I want to. You sure? Because this isn't a one-time thing. This isn't a photo op. This is showing up. Regularly. Building relationships. Being present even when it's hard. Understand. Do you? Because a lot of people say they want to help. Then they see how messy it is, how complicated, how slow progress is, and they disappear. I don't want you to disappear. Keanu stood. I'm not going to disappear. I promise. They shook hands. Thomas's grip was firm, steady, the handshake of someone who is finding solid ground again. Thank you, Thomas said, for everything, for seeing me, for not letting me stay invisible. You were never invisible. People just stopped looking. Then thank you for looking. Keanu left 20 minutes later, after exchanging numbers, making plans to meet up in a few days. Thomas watched from his window as Keanu climbed on his motorcycle, pulled on his helmet, drove away into Los Angeles traffic. Then Thomas sat at his desk and picked up his study materials. 3 weeks until the test. 3 weeks to prove to himself that he could do this, that he could rebuild, that giving up wasn't the only option. He studied until his eyes burned, fell asleep at the desk around midnight, his head on an open manual. Woke up at dawn with a crick in his neck and determination in his chest. He lost 6 years. He wasn't losing anymore. Meanwhile, across town in Beverly Hills, Victoria Hampton stood in the empty shell of what used to be Elysee. The marble was still there, the bones of the place. But everything else was gone. Equipment sold. Furniture auctioned. Staff dispersed to other restaurants. She wasn't alone. Diane sat at one of the remaining tables, Charlie the dog at her feet. And there were others. 6 people total. Homeless individuals Victoria had met over the past 2 weeks, fed, talked to, listened to. So this is the plan? Asked Marcus, a veteran in his 40s who'd been living in his car. You're really turning this place into a community kitchen? That's the plan, Victoria said. 3 meals a day. Free for anyone who needs them. Staffed by volunteers and people transitioning out of homelessness. Job training, resume building, social services on site. How are you paying for it? I'm not. Yet. I'm applying for grants. Nonprofit status. I've got some donors interested. It's going to take time. And if it doesn't work out, this from Diane. Then I tried. And that's more than I was doing before. Victoria looked around the space. It looked nothing like the Elysee she'd built. No gold fixtures. No designer furniture. Just tables and chairs and a kitchen designed to feed people, not impress them. It was better. She didn't know if it would succeed. Didn't know if she could pull it off. But for the first time in 15 years, she was building something that mattered more than her ego. When do we open? Marcus asked. 6 weeks. December 1st. If I can get the permits approved, the equipment installed, the staff trained. You need help? I need a lot of help. Then you've got it. Victoria felt her throat tighten. These people, who'd been treated like trash by businesses like hers, were offering to help rebuild, to create something better. It was more grace than she deserved. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank us yet, Diane said, smiling. Wait until we're open and the real work starts. Then you'll be begging us to leave. They laughed. And Victoria, standing in the ruins of her old dream, felt something she'd thought was gone forever. Hope, fragile and tentative, but there, the work of redemption had begun. It would take years. It would be hard, but it would be worth it, because the alternative was staying the person she'd been. And that person had built something beautiful on a foundation of cruelty. This time, she'd build on something better, even if it took everything she had left. 6 months later, spring in Los Angeles, which meant the same as winter except the jacaranda trees were blooming purple along the streets and the tourists wore shorts instead of light jackets. Thomas Wells walked into Precision Motors at 7:30 in the morning, his toolbox in one hand, a coffee in the other. The shop was already humming. 3 bays occupied, mechanics bent over engines, diagnostic computers beeping, the smell of oil and metal and work. Carl Johnson stood by the front desk, talking to a customer. He saw Thomas, raise a hand in greeting. Thomas nodded back, headed to his bay. Bay 4. His bay. 6 months, and it still felt surreal. He'd passed the ASE test. Not just passed, scored in the 90th percentile. Maria had called him crying when the results came through. David Cohen had taken him to dinner. Keanu had sent a text that just said, "Told you," with a single fist bump emoji. Carl had hired him the next day. Started him at $28 an hour, with benefits after 90 days. Health insurance, dental, vision, things Thomas had stopped believing existed for people like him. 3 months in, Carl had bumped him to 32. "You're the best tech I've got," Carl had said. Pay should reflect that. Thomas had cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes after that conversation. Now he was 6 months in. He had an apartment, a real one bedroom in Culver City that he'd rented with his first paycheck. He had furniture from IKEA that he'd assembled himself. He had a bank account with actual money in it. He had a routine. He woke up. He went to work. He came home. He called his daughter. His daughter, Sarah, 26 years old now, married, living in Phoenix. They'd reconnected 3 months ago, after Thomas had finally worked up the courage to find her on Facebook and send a message. Just 4 words, "I'm sorry. I'm better." She called the next day. They talked for 2 hours. She cried. He cried. She told him about her life, her job as a teacher, her husband who worked in IT. She told him about her mom, Thomas's ex-wife, who'd remarried and was happy. She told him she'd thought he was dead. "I'll look for you," Sarah had said. "For years, I drove through downtown LA looking at faces. I was so scared I'd find you. Or worse, that I wouldn't." They video called now once a week. She'd visited last month, driven out from Phoenix for a weekend. Met his apartment. Met Carl. Met Maria and David and Dr. Chun. Met Keanu, who'd happened to stop by the shop that same weekend and had stayed for an hour, talking to Sarah about her dad, about how proud he should be, about how recovery wasn't linear but Thomas was doing the work. Sarah had hugged Keanu before she left. "Thank you for giving me my dad back." Keanu had looked uncomfortable, the way he always did with praise. "I didn't give him back. He came back himself." Now Thomas was working on a Porsche 911, 2018 model. Customer complained about rough idle. He hooked up the diagnostic computer, scanned for codes. Found a misfire in cylinder 3. Started the troubleshooting process. Checked the spark plug. Checked the coil. Checked the fuel injector. Systematic. Methodical. Meditative. This was his therapy as much as the weekly sessions with Dr. Chun. Working with his hands. Fixing problems. Taking something broken and making it whole. There was a metaphor there that Dr. Chun loved to explore. "You're not just fixing cars," she'd said last week. "You're proving to yourself that broken things can be repaired. That damage isn't permanent. That with the right tools and enough time, you can restore function. Sometimes things are too broken," Thomas had argued. "Sometimes you have to scrap them. And sometimes you think something's scrap until you take a closer look and realize it's salvageable. Which category do you fall into? Thomas hadn't answered. He was still figuring that out. His phone buzzed. A text from Keanu. Free for lunch? Want to talk to you about something. Thomas typed back, yeah. Noon work. Perfect. I'll come to you. At noon, Keanu pulled up in his Porsche. Thomas finished the job he was working on, wiped his hands, met him in the parking lot. They walked to a taco truck 3 blocks away, the kind of place that had been there for 20 years and served food that made you believe in God. They ordered, found a spot at a picnic table under a tree, ate for a few minutes in comfortable silence. So, what did you want to talk about? Thomas asked finally. Keanu set down his taco. I'm starting a foundation. Well, expanding an existing one. Focused on homeless veterans. Housing, job training, mental health services. The whole spectrum. That's great. I want you to be part of it. Thomas stopped chewing. What? I need someone who's lived it. Someone who understands what works and what doesn't. Someone who can talk to people without condescending. Someone who can advocate. I'm not an advocate. I'm a mechanic. You're both. You've been helping people since you got stable. Maria told me. You volunteer at Hope Foundation 3 nights a week. You're mentoring 2 guys who are going through what you went through. That's different. Ow, that's just, I don't know, paying it forward. Exactly. Now imagine doing that full time. With resources, with funding, with a platform to actually change policy. Thomas felt panic rising. I don't know anything about running a foundation. I barely know how to run my own life. You'd have support. Staff. I'm not asking you to do it alone. I'm asking you to be the voice, the face, the person who can stand in front of city council and say, I was there. This is what needs to change. Why me? Because you're credible. Because you're compassionate. Because you give a shit. And because I trust you. Thomas looked down at his food. His stomach had knotted. This was too much. Too fast. He'd just gotten stable. Just gotten his life back. Now Keanu was asking him to become some kind of public figure. I don't know if I can do this. You don't have to decide now. Think about it. Take a few weeks. Talk to Sarah. Talk to Dr. Chun. But think about it. Please. They finished lunch. Keanu dropped him back at the shop. Thomas worked the rest of the day in a daze, barely paying attention to the brake job he was doing, almost missing a worn caliper that could have caused an accident. Carl noticed. Pulled him aside at 4 p.m. You okay? You seem off. Yeah, just thinking about something. Want to talk about it? Thomas hesitated, then told him about Keanu's offer, about the foundation, about the fear that he wasn't qualified, wasn't ready, wasn't enough. Carl listened. When Thomas finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Can I tell you something? When I first met you, I thought you were a charity case. Keanu's project. I was doing him a favor. But after about a week, I realized I had it backwards. You weren't the favor. You were the asset. You're the best mechanic I've hired in 10 years. You show up on time. You do quality work. You're patient with customers. You're teaching the younger guys. You're not a charity case, Thomas. You're a success story. I don't feel like a success story. That's because you're living it. You're too close to see it. But trust me, from the outside, you're exactly the kind of person who should be advocating for others. Because you've been there. You've survived. And you're thriving. That matters. Thomas went home that night and didn't sleep. Just lay in his bed, his actual bed with actual sheets in his actual apartment, staring at the ceiling. Part of him wanted to say yes. Wanted to take Keanu's offer and turn his suffering into something meaningful. Wanted to be the person who could stand up and say, I was invisible and now I'm not. And here's how we make sure fewer people become invisible in the first place. But another part was terrified. Terrified of failing. Terrified of being exposed as a fraud. Terrified that if he stepped into the spotlight, everyone would see all the ways he was still broken. He called Sarah. She picked up on the second ring, sounded worried. Dad? It's midnight. You okay? Yeah. Sorry. I know it's late. I just need to talk. What's wrong? He told her. About Keanu's offer. About the foundation. About the fear. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Do you remember when I was 8? I had that science fair project. The volcano. I was so scared of presenting in front of the class. I remember. You didn't want to go to school that day. But you made me go. You said fear wasn't a reason not to do something. You said fear was just your body's way of telling you something mattered. That if it didn't matter, you wouldn't be scared. Thomas felt his throat tighten. I said that. You did. And you were right. I was terrified, but I did it anyway. And my volcano won second place. And I learned that I could do hard things even when I was scared. I don't remember being that wise. You were. You are. You just forgot for a while. Sarah's voice softened. Dad, I think you should do this. I think you'd be amazing at it. And I think it would give you something you need even more than stability. Purpose. I have purpose. I'm a mechanic. You're also a survivor. And that's worth something. Don't waste it. They talked for another hour. By the end, Thomas felt something shifting. Not certainty, but maybe the beginning of it. The sense that saying yes was scarier than saying no, but also more honest. He texted Keanu at 1 a.m. I'll do it. But I need time. I'm not quitting my job. Not yet. Let me do both for a while. See if I'm any good at this. Keanu's response came immediately, like he'd been waiting. Deal. Thank you. You're going to change lives. I'm going to try. That's all anyone can do. 3 months later, late summer, the foundation, officially called Second Chance Initiative, launched with an event at a community center in downtown LA. Not fancy, not glamorous, just real. Folding chairs and catered food from a local restaurant. Speeches from people who'd been helped. Success stories. Thomas stood backstage, or what passed for backstage, which was really just a hallway with a curtain. His hand was shaking. He was wearing a suit, the first suit he'd owned since before Iraq. Dark gray. Simple. Sarah had helped him pick it out. Maria appeared next to him. You're up in 5 minutes. I'm going to throw up. No, you're not. You're going to walk out there and tell your story. Like you've told it 100 times. Those were small groups. Intimate. This is 200 people. And cameras. So pretend the cameras aren't there. Just talk to the people. Tell them the truth. Thomas took a breath. What if I freeze? Then you freeze. And then you unfreeze. And you keep going. That's all anyone expects. Keanu appeared on his other side. Ready? No. Good. That means it matters. They walked him to the edge of the curtain. On the other side, Thomas could hear the crowd. Conversations. Laughter. The sound of community. Keanu squeezed his shoulder. You've got this. Just be yourself. What if myself isn't enough? It's always enough. Someone announced his name. Thomas walked out onto the small stage. The lights were bright. He couldn't see faces, just shapes. He stood at the microphone, adjusted it down slightly, and took a breath. My name is Thomas Wells. 12 months ago, I was homeless, living on the street, sleeping in doorways, getting moved along by business owners who saw me as a problem instead of a person. His voice was steady, stronger than he felt. He told his story. Iraq, the IED, the PTSD, the slow collapse. 6 years on the street. The morning at Elysee when Derek threatened him and Keanu intervened. I'm not standing here to make you feel sorry for me. I'm standing here to tell you that what happened to me happens to thousands of people every day. Veterans, people with mental illness, people who just had bad luck. And most of them don't get a second chance. Not because they don't deserve it, but because the systems aren't there. The support isn't there. The compassion isn't there. He talked about Hope Foundation, about Maria and David Cohen and Dr. Chun, about Carl giving him a job, about his daughter taking him back, about the slow, hard work of recovery. This foundation exists because Keanu Reeves saw me. Actually saw me. Not as a homeless person, but as a human being. And that seeing changed everything. But it shouldn't require a celebrity to make that happen. It should be automatic. We should all be seeing each other. All the time. He talked about the foundation's mission. Housing first. Job training. Mental health services. Advocacy for policy change. All the things he'd learned were necessary, not just helpful. I'm not an expert. I'm just someone who lived it. But that's exactly why I'm here. Because expertise without experience is incomplete. You need both. You need the people who understand the systems and the people who survive despite the systems. He finished 20 minutes later. The applause was loud. He walked off stage in a daze. Keanu was there, smiling. You were perfect. I rambled. You were honest. That's better than perfect. People want to talk to him. Journalists, advocates, other veterans. He spent the next 2 hours in conversations, exchanging numbers, promising to follow up. It was exhausting, but it was also energizing. This mattered. This was work worth doing. At the end of the night, Thomas found himself outside the community center, sitting on a bench, decompressing. Sarah called. I watched the live stream. Dad, you were incredible. I was terrified. I know. I could see it. But you did anyway. I'm so proud of you. Thomas felt tears coming. I'm proud of me too. Is that allowed? It's required. They talked for a few minutes. When they hung up, Thomas sat in the warm Los Angeles evening and thought about the arc of the past year. From sleeping under overpasses to speaking on stages. From invisible to visible. From hopeless to purposeful. It hadn't been linear. There had been bad days. Days when the PTSD overwhelmed him. Days when he wanted to give up, when stability felt like a lie his brain was telling him that would collapse at any moment. But he kept going. One day, 1 hour, 1 minute at a time. Keanu came outside, sat next to him. They didn't speak for a while. Just sat together, two men who'd found each other at exactly the right moment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Thank you, Thomas said finally. For everything. For seeing me. For not letting me stay lost. You found yourself. I just reminded you where to look. Same thing, maybe. They sat until the lights inside the community center went out. Until the staff started locking doors. Until it was time to go home. Thomas had a home to go to. A job to go to tomorrow. A daughter who loved him. A purpose that mattered. He had his life back. Different from the one he'd lost, but maybe better. Definitely harder one. As he walked to his car, parked on the street, legal and registered in his, he passed a man sleeping in a doorway. Young guy, maybe 30. Cardboard sign next to him. Homeless vet. Anything helps. Thomas stopped, reached into his wallet. He had $40 in cash. He put 20 in the man's cup, careful not to wake him. Then he wrote his number on a business card. Second Chance Initiative. Thomas Wells, Outreach Coordinator. Tucked it next to the money where the man would find it in the morning. He couldn't save everyone, but he could save someone. And maybe that someone would save someone else. And maybe that was how the world actually changed. Not through grand gestures, but through a chain of small acts of seeing each other. Thomas got in his car, drove home, slept in his bed, woke up the next morning and did it all again. Because that was the work. Showing up. Every day. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. The work of being human. The work of remembering that everyone else was human too. The work that never ended, but always mattered. 1 year after that Tuesday morning. Autumn again. The cycle of seasons in Los Angeles, subtle but present. The light changed angles. The air held a memory of coolness that would become actual coolness in another month. Derek Stanford stood outside a community center in Inglewood, his car parked at a meter he'd fed with quarters. The building was modest, painted yellow with blue trim, a hand-painted sign that said New Horizons Reentry Program. He'd been sitting in his car for 10 minutes, trying to work up the courage to go inside. His phone buzzed. A text from his therapist, Dr. Raymond Foster. Remember what we talked about. Shame is not the same as accountability. You're doing the work. That matters. Derek had been seeing Dr. Foster for 11 months. 3 times a week at first, when everything had collapsed and he'd been suicidal. Now, once a week, maintenance sessions, keeping him grounded. The year had been brutal. After his public apology, after being fired from Elysee, Derek had discovered that cancellation wasn't a metaphor. It was tangible, real. Every job application rejected. Every interview that went cold when they Googled his name. His savings depleted. His Audi repossessed. His apartment lease ended and not renewed. He'd moved back in with his parents in Riverside at 32 years old, sleeping in his childhood bedroom with posters he'd never bothered to take down. Rock bottom had come 4 months ago. Standing on a parking garage roof in downtown Riverside at 3 a.m., looking at the concrete 6 floors below, thinking how easy it would be to just step off. To end the humiliation. To stop being Derek Stanford, the guy who'd threatened a homeless veteran and become the face of everything wrong with society. He'd called the suicide hotline, talked to a counselor for 2 hours. She'd stayed on the phone with him until dawn, until the immediate crisis passed, until he'd climbed back in his car, driven to an emergency psychiatric facility, and check himself in. 2 weeks inpatient. Another month of intensive outpatient therapy. Medication for depression and anxiety. Group therapy where he'd sat in a circle with other people whose lives had fallen apart for different reasons and realized that suffering was universal even if the causes weren't. Dr. Foster had been tough with him. You want forgiveness? Earn it. Not through words, through actions. You have to become someone different than you were. I don't know how. Then figure it out. That's the work. Derek had started volunteering. First at a food bank, because it was anonymous and he could hide behind a hairnet and name tag. Then at a homeless shelter, serving meals, sorting donations. The irony wasn't lost on him. The guy who'd threatened a homeless man, now ladling soup into bowls for homeless people. But it wasn't performative. It wasn't rehabilitation theater. It was genuine, because somewhere in those therapy sessions and medication adjustments and long nights lying awake, Derek had realized something. He'd spent his entire adult life trying to be someone impressive, and in the process had become someone hollow. The manager job at Elysee, the expensive suit, the Rolex, the Audi, the golf club membership, all of it was costume, performance, proof that he'd made it, without ever asking what making it actually meant. And when the costume was stripped away, when he was just Derek with no job and no money and no status, he discovered he didn't know who that person was. He'd been performing so long he'd forgotten there was supposed to be someone underneath. So he was building that person now. Slowly, painfully, a different Derek, one who measured worth differently. The volunteer work had led here, to New Horizons, a program that helped people with criminal records find employment. Second chances for people society had written off. The director, a woman named Angela Reeves, no relation to Keanu, had been looking for someone to help with job placement coordination. Someone who understood the corporate world but also understood failure. Derek had applied, had been honest in his cover letter. I'm the guy from the Elysee incident. I threatened a homeless veteran and lost everything. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for a chance to do better. Angela had called him in for an interview. Had asked him hard questions. Why should I trust you? How do I know this isn't just image rehabilitation? You don't, Derek had said. You'd have to take a chance, which is what I'm asking you to do for your clients every day. So maybe I'm a test case. If you can take a chance on me, maybe it proves you should take chances on them. She'd hired him. Part-time, minimum wage, probationary period of 6 months. Screw up once, you're gone. I don't care if it's a bad day or a relapse or whatever. These people need advocates, not liabilities. I understand. Now was his first day. Derek took a breath, got out of his car, walked to the entrance. Inside, the building smelled like coffee and photocopier toner and effort. A small reception area. Motivational posters on the walls. Your past doesn't define your future. Everyone deserves a second chance. Angela was waiting. 48 years old, black, with braids pulled back and eyes that assessed everything. She didn't smile when she saw him, just nodded. Derek, on time. That's good. I'm early, actually. Even better. Come on, I'll show you your space. She led him down a hallway to a small office, really just a converted closet with a desk and a computer and a phone. A window that looked out at the parking lot. It was smaller than the closet in his old apartment. It was perfect. You'll be working with our clients to identify their skills, polish resumes, practice interviews, and connect them with employers who are willing to hire people with records. It's going to be frustrating. A lot of rejection. A lot of employers who say they believe in second chances until they actually have to give one. Understand. Your first client is waiting in room 3. His name is Marcus Chun, 37. Did 8 years for armed robbery. Been out for 6 months. Can't find work. Everyone sees the conviction and stops reading. Derek felt his stomach twist. What if I can't help him? Then you try anyway. That's the job. She left. Derek sat at his desk, looked at the file she'd given him. Marcus Chun, high school education, some community college before his arrest. Work history as a line cook. Interests included basketball and graphic design. A life compressed into a few sheets of paper. Derek walked to room 3. Knocked. A voice said, "Yeah, come in." Marcus was tall, Asian, with tattoos visible on his neck and arms. He sat with his arms crossed, defensive posture, eyes that said he'd been disappointed too many times to get hopeful anymore. Marcus? I am Derek. I'm going to be helping you with your job search. Marcus looked him up and down. Derek was wearing khakis and a button-down from Target. His watch was a $20 Timex. He'd lost 30 pounds from stress and couldn't afford to replace his wardrobe, so everything hung loose. You look like you need help more than I do, Marcus said. Derek laughed, surprising himself. Fair. I'd just lose everything. But I used to work in the restaurant industry, and I see here you were a line cook. Used to be. Can't get hired now. Everyone wants a background check. Soon as they see the conviction, they ghost. What if we tried a different approach? What if we focused on places that publicly commit to hiring people with records? Or what if we got you training that makes you too valuable to pass up? Marcus's eyes narrowed. Why do you care? Honestly, because a year ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I treated someone like they were worthless because of their circumstances. And I've spent the last year learning that everybody has circumstances. That judging people based on their worst moment is exactly what made me do that terrible thing. So I'm trying to do better. You're the Elysee guy. Derek's heart sank. Yeah, I saw the video. You were a real asshole. I am. I'm trying to be less of one. Marcus studied him for a long moment. Then, grudgingly, okay, I'll give you a shot. But I've heard all this before. Everyone says they want to help. Then nothing changes. Then let's change that. They worked for 2 hours. Derek made phone calls to every restaurant he'd ever worked with, swallowing his pride, explaining Marcus's situation, asking for a chance. Most said no. A few said maybe. One, a gastropub in Culver City, said they'd be willing to do a working interview. One shift, the manager said. Unpaid. We see how he does, then we decide. It wasn't fair. It wasn't ideal. But it was a door opening. Marcus agreed to try. Derek set up the interview for the following week, gave Marcus his cell number. Call me if you need anything. Anything. Even if it's just to tell me this is bullshit. I'll listen. After Marcus left, Derek sat in his tiny office and felt something he hadn't felt in a year. Useful. Not important. Not impressive. Just useful. Like maybe his existence had a point beyond his own ego. Angela appeared in his doorway. How'd it go? I think okay. Got him a working interview. That's better than most do on day one. She handed him another file. You've got 2 more this afternoon. Watch it yourself. This work burns people out fast. I will. And Derek? I'm giving you a chance because I believe people can change. But you have to prove it. Every day. Not just to me, but to yourself. I know. She left. Derek opened the second file. Started reading. Another life, another story, another person society had decided wasn't worth investing in. He'd been that person in a different way. The person people had written off. The person who'd become a cautionary tale. And he was still climbing out of that hole. But at least he was climbing. That evening, across town, Victoria Hampton stood in the kitchen of what used to be Elysee and was now the common table. The transformation had taken 10 months and every dollar she could scrape together. The marble was covered with industrial epoxy, more practical for high-volume cooking. The designer fixtures were gone, replaced with basic commercial equipment. The dining room had been reconfigured with long communal tables instead of intimate settings. It wasn't beautiful, not in the way Elysee had been beautiful, but it was functional, and it was full. 75 people sat at the tables eating dinner. Homeless individuals, families from a shelter 2 blocks away, anyone who needed a meal. No questions asked, no judgment, just food. The menu was simple. Tonight, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, salad bread. Home-style cooking, the kind Victoria's mother used to make before she decided that wasn't sophisticated enough. Diane worked the serving line, scooping potatoes onto plates. Marcus, the vet who'd been living in his car, worked the kitchen, prepping vegetables for tomorrow. 3 other volunteers moved between the dining room and kitchen, clearing plates, refilling water, talking to people. Victoria worked the line too, serving chicken. It was a far cry from the Michelin star presentations she used to obsess over. No microgreens artfully placed. No foam or reduction or deconstruction. Just a piece of chicken and gravy, making sure everyone got enough. A woman came through the line, maybe 50, wearing layers despite the warm evening. This smells amazing. Thank you. There's plenty, so come back for seconds if you want. Really? Really? That's the whole point. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. You don't know what this means. Victoria did know, or at least she was learning. She was learning what it meant to be hungry and have someone feed you without demanding something in return, without making you feel small for needing help. The common table ran on grants, donations, and volunteers. Victoria had sold her house, moved into a studio apartment in Koreatown, poured every remaining dollar into the nonprofit. She worked 80 hours a week, cooked, cleaned, did paperwork, applied for permits, begged for funding. It was harder than running Elysee had ever been. It was also more satisfying. After the dinner service ended, after the last guest left, after the kitchen was cleaned and the prep done for tomorrow, Victoria sat at one of the communal tables with Diane and Marcus and the other volunteers. We're out of funding in 3 months, Victoria said. The grants run out. I've applied for renewals, but there's no guarantee. So what do? Diane asked. We figured out. We fundraise. We cut costs. We find more donors. We keep going. And if we can't, then we keep going anyway. We just figure out how. Marcus laughed. You're either the most optimistic person I know or the most delusional. Maybe both. They talked for another hour. Planning, problem-solving, supporting each other. It was the opposite of Elysee's staff meetings, where Victoria had dictated from on high and everyone else had executed. This was collaborative, democratic, exhausting, and beautiful. When everyone left, Victoria stayed. Sat alone in the dining room that used to be a temple to exclusivity and was now a testament to inclusion. She thought about the journey from there to here, the destruction of everything she'd built, the reconstruction of something better. Her phone buzzed. An email. She almost didn't check it, too tired for more bad news. But something made her open it. It was from Bernard Rousseau, the Bon Appetit critic who'd eviscerated her a year ago. Subject line, follow-up. Victoria's hand shook as she opened it. Ms. Hampton, I've been watching your journey over the past year with interest. I visited the common table last week, anonymously. I sat among your guests. I ate your food, and I wanted to reach out. What you're doing is remarkable. Not because the food is technically impressive, though it's well executed, but because you've taken everything you lost and transformed it into something that actually matters. You've moved from serving the wealthy to serving the vulnerable, from exclusivity to inclusion, from ego to service. I'm writing a feature about restaurants that are redefining what it means to serve a community. I'd like the common table to be the centerpiece. If you're interested, call me. Also, for what it's worth, I believe in second chances. You've earned yours. Bernard. Victoria read it 3 times, and she put her head down on the table and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. From the realization that redemption was possible, that you could break something and build something better from the pieces. She didn't know if the common table would survive, didn't know if they'd get funding, if they'd make it another year. But she knew she'd keep trying, because this work mattered. These people mattered. And she'd spent too many years forgetting that everyone mattered, not just the ones who could afford $30 cappuccinos. Late that night, Keanu Reeves sat in his living room in the hills, his laptop open, reading the latest report from Second Chance Initiative. 6 months since launch, they'd helped 47 people find housing, 32 people find jobs, connected hundreds with mental health services. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. There were 60,000 homeless people in LA County. Second Chance was barely making a dent. But it was something, and something was better than nothing. His phone rang. Thomas. Hey, you still up? Yeah, can't sleep. You. Same. I've been thinking about the city council meeting next week. The presentation. Thomas was scheduled to speak to the LA City Council about expanding funding for homeless services. It was a big deal. Media would be there, politicians, advocates, and Thomas telling his story, asking for change. You nervous? Keanu asked. Terrified, but I'm doing it anyway. That's all that matters. Is it though? What if I speak and nothing changes? What if they smile and nod and then vote against funding anyway? Then you speak again and again until they listen, or until enough people hear you, that the politicians have no choice. Thomas was quiet. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. All this work, all this effort, and homelessness just keeps getting worse. It would be worse without people fighting. Without you fighting. You really believe that? Edo. I've seen you change lives, Thomas. I've watched people get hope because you showed up and proved that recovery is possible. That matters, even if the big systems don't change immediately. I'm just tired. Some days I wake up and I still can't believe I have an apartment. And other days I wake up and feel guilty that I have an apartment when so many people don't. Like I got lucky and they didn't, and that's not fair. It's not fair. But the answer isn't feeling guilty. It's using your luck to help others get lucky too. That's what I'm trying to do. I know. And it's working. Trust me. They talked for another 20 minutes. About the foundation. About upcoming events. About the small victories and large frustrations. When they hung up, Keanu sat in the quiet of his house and thought about that morning 18 months ago. Walking into Elysee for coffee. Seeing Thomas through the window. Watching Derek threaten him. Making the decision to do something instead of nothing. He hadn't known what it would become. Hadn't known it would lead to a foundation. To Thomas becoming an advocate. To Victoria transforming her restaurant. To Derek doing the slow work of redemption. He'd just seen someone being hurt and decided he couldn't look away. And that decision had rippled. Changed lives. Created possibilities. Keanu thought about all the times he had looked away. All the times he'd walked past someone asking for help and kept walking. All the times he'd donated money and felt like that was enough, that writing a check absolved him from actually engaging. He'd been wrong. Money helped, but presence helped more. Seeing people, actually seeing them, treating them like they mattered. That's what had started this. That's what sustained it. The simple, radical act of seeing someone. His phone buzzed. A text from Maria, his assistant. Tomorrow's call sheets are in your inbox. Also, Thomas's speech for the city council meeting is attached. He wanted you to look it over. Keanu opened the attachment. Read Thomas's speech. It was good, strong, personal, but not sentimental. Policy-focused, but human. At the end, Thomas had written, "I'm not special. I was just lucky enough to be seen by someone who decided I was worth helping. But every person sleeping on our streets is worth helping. Every single one. The question isn't whether they deserve it. The question is whether we have the courage to see them, to really see them, and then to act." Keanu sent back a man outside a cafe and had grown into something larger than any of them could have predicted. And in apartments and shelters and community centers across Los Angeles, people who'd been invisible were becoming visible. People who'd been written off were being rewritten. People who'd lost hope were finding it again. One person at a time. One meal. One job. One conversation. The slow, hard, necessary work of remembering that everyone was human. Everyone mattered. Everyone deserved to be seen.